All right, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this January meeting of the Policy Implementation Committee to order. The members of the committee all received copies of the minutes of our last meeting on October 30th. And
I'll move the minutes.
Well, hold on. You have eight of you, so Nancy needs to read the.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So that's a good turnout today.
Sorry, we have a big turnout.
Adequate notice that this meeting of the Planning Commission was given in compliance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act by providing notice to all municipal and county clerks within the Planning area and to the Secretary of State on December 23rd, 2015, and to the Commission's officially designated newspapers on December 23rd, 2015, and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the Commission's office.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now, we have a motion from Commissioner Ashman to adopt the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion of the minutes? All in favor of their adoption, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
We have one abstention. Okay, the minutes are approved. We have a somewhat lengthy agenda today, and apparently a lot of people are here who I imagine have something to say. So I can anticipate that there's going to be a bit of a long meeting. It depends on point everybody. Even with that, I would like to make an announcement that's outside of the agenda, just public interest. For the past 4.5 years, it's been my pleasure and privilege to serve as the chairman of the Finance Commission. And I learned last night that the governor has designated a replacement for me as chair. And I want to take this opportunity to thank my fellow commissioners, the staff of the Pinelands Commission, and the public, all of whom have shown great patience with me. I came to this spot as a total newcomer to the commission 4.5 years ago, and had to start as commissioner, as the chair. And I had a lot to learn, and I still have a lot to learn. And everybody's been very patient as I've been coming along. But in any event, we now have a new chairman, and I would like you all to join me in congratulating and supporting Commissioner Sean Erlin, who will be the new chair of the Finance Commission. Chairman Erlin has graciously allowed me to continue as chair of this committee. Usually today, I'm sure he's going to be looking at committee assignments, but for the moment, we'll stay the course as we are, so I'm chairing this meeting today. So we've had the minutes. First item of business is a briefing on affordable housing from the staff.
Good morning. Stacy Roth and I prepared a slideshow for you to bring you up to date on what has been fairly complicated and been going on for a long time, but it's going to start to have some impact on our municipalities and the Pinelands. This is Stacy's quote: "Everything old is new again, or maybe not." And I think she's referring to the fact that the affordable housing just keeps going around and around, and keep going back and forth. I would probably compare it and said deja vu all over again. But anyway, so I just want to bring you up to date. And the important thing is that affordable units are going to be assigned to each of the communities in New Jersey, and those affordable units to be built probably need sewer service, and a lot of our communities don't have them. So it's going to be very difficult to figure out how that works. And even the communities that have sewer service, some of the numbers are high, and that makes it difficult as well. So I just want to briefly go through some slides here to bring you up to date on it. So first, a little background. Some of you may remember that actually when the CMP was adopted back in the early 80s, it included provisions for low and moderate income housing in the Pinelands. However, there was two very important court cases that are actually nationally important, called Memorial 1 and Memorial 2, that occurred in the early 80s that dealt with affordable housing in New Jersey. And as a result of that, the legislature adopted the Fair Housing Act in 1985 and created an administrative office to take care of affordable housing called COA. It also, it was supposed to work with all the municipalities, basically certify their plans to provide affordable housing in the state. The legislature then also immediately amended the Climate Protection Act and took away the obligations and authorities we had to deal with low and moderate income housing. So in 1985, the CMP and the Climate Protection Act will change to delete those provisions. So since then, we have not dealt directly with affordable housing. Instead, our obligation has been to work with the Office of COA to effectuate the need there. There's been several other court cases, and it's gone back and forth, and part of the issue was assigning numbers. And that's the big news, that's what you're going to hear more and more about. And there was a variety of things, and COA finally came up with what are called round 3 numbers, and they were sued over those because the fair housing advocates thought they were too low. And then the lawsuit was successful. COA was overturned, and the authority was actually taken away from COA and given to district courts. And so the courts are now going to be housing planners. And the courts will be working with each of the towns to look at their plans to see, A, what is the number that should be assigned to them, and B, to certify those plans if the communities come forward with a plan to implement those numbers. And we will be involved in those because they involve zoning. They involve zoning and density and sewer and things like that, and PDCs as well. So this court case was decided in 2015, March. Basically, as I said, so what the courts are going to be doing is what COA used to do. Look at the towns, sign numbers, and look at their plans to see if they work or not. And so we will be more or less involved in those. If the towns do not get certified plans, let's see what the slide say, a lot of words. The third bullet is the important one. If the courts do not certify towns' plans as being reasonable to implement those numbers, then builders can apply for what are called builder's remedies. And what a builder's remedy is the builder comes in and says, I want this piece of land, I want it at 6 units per acre, and the local zoning is blown away. It does not apply anymore. That means the final certified local zoning for that site also is blown away. That's where we get involved. We certify towns with their plans and densities and sewers and PDCs, that all gets pushed away if they don't have a certified plan. So we in the towns are all very anxious that those plans get completed and are built upon. The main issue, I mean, there's all kind of issues, but the main issue is what is the number? How many affordable housing obligations does each community need to absorb and plan for? You know, actually change their zoning and make sure it works. And what do we have is we have, at this point, 4 sets of numbers, all wildly different, all done by competent professionals, suggesting what the numbers should be for every community in New Jersey, 566 different communities with numbers. The first one were the old color numbers, were commonly referred to as the third round numbers that were done by Principal named Robert Rochelle, who has become ill and hasn't worked since then on numbers. But he was the first set of numbers. Fair Share Housing, as I said, sued and overturned those numbers. Did not believe they were high enough. And so they hired Dr. McKinsey from Princeton University, and he came out with another set of numbers. And these numbers were very high. Some towns went from a 0 obligation to 1,000 units obligation. That was one of our towns, one of our commissioners here. Winslow Township went from 0 to 1,000. Very upsetting. And so what happened is that at least, I don't know the exact number, but over 200 communities in New Jersey got together and had a lawyer basically serve as an organizing agent, but hired a firm out of Philadelphia called eConsult to do another set of numbers. And those just came out January, late December, January. So we now have a third set of numbers. And then in Ocean County, a special master was appointed. These are courts appoint special professionals to try to help compute and measure these things. And they've come up with another set of numbers for Ocean County towns. So we now have 4 sets of numbers, 3 of them Pinelands wide, 1 of them only dealing with Ocean County. And the court has all these in front of them. And what the municipalities have done, generally speaking, we haven't seen all the plans, they had to submit by December 6th or thereabouts their plans. They picked the lower the numbers. So, which tends to be the console number. So they pick that number, said this is our plan, we will implement this, and they show which sites they're going to use and what kind of zoning, what kind of tools. And so the courts now have to sort that out. Is that plan reasonable? Did they pick the right number? Do they have enough tools to implement it? And these all have implications for final zoning. So, as I said, those are going to be the things. There's 15 different judges assigned to it. That's an interesting issue in and of itself. Are the judges going to use exactly the same standards? I don't know. There's a lot of unknown that is going to be going on in the next couple of months. And what happens right now is everything's frozen. Builders are not entitled to builders' remedy lawsuits right now. But if the courts look at the town's plan and say, that doesn't cut it, the number's too low, the implementing mechanisms are not right, then they will be not certified, and it's fair open game for the builder's remedies. So all this is going to be happening in the next few months. So, in terms of the Pinelands, as I said, we have certified zoning for 53 communities. You've seen it, the town proposed it, you've seen it, you've certified it, and we have it for the 53. So that's what we're concerned with. And the way that we do zoning, I just remind everybody, is there are 9 management areas in the Pineland, each one of which have densities and intensities, and based on that, towns take those densities and implement them with their local zoning. In general, the one thing that's going to happen is generally in terms of affordable housing, you need density. Why do you need density? Because somebody has to provide the subsidy. And I have a slide a little bit later on, but one rule of thumb is 4 market rate houses can support 1 affordable house. That's not a scientific rule, it can change, etc. But somebody has to pay for that subsidy to pull down that one house. And so that means you need higher densities. If you have higher densities, in terms of Pineland water quality, you need sewer. So this is how this is all starting to tangle together a little bit. In general, we permit sewer in 3 of our management areas. Regional growth areas, Pinelands towns. There's a fair amount of flexibility municipalities have in the first 2. The third one does permit sewers, but there's a very tight standard associated with it, and that's that villages cannot expand, cannot be zoned for more than the number of houses, doubling the number of houses they had in 1980. So if the village in 1980 had 150 homes, they can zone for another 150. Well, that doesn't give you much room to do high-density zoning for affordable housing. So even though Pinelands villages can be sewered, there's a density problem if you want to go high. And as I mentioned to you, you should keep in mind that the first thing is just a guideline, if you like, that you can't have affordable housing without somebody bringing the price down. And usually it's the market units that do it. So in the past, people have used a 4-to-1 ratio. Sometimes they use 5-to-1, sometimes 6-to-1. Sometimes in the past, COVID said you have to have zoning that's at least 6 dwelling units per acre before you can put affordable housing in. 6 dwelling units per acre is a lot of money. We have very few zones in the Pinelands that are that high. We have seen that if everybody works together, we can get 10 or 20% of the units affordable. We can also take care of the BDC obligations which go with the zoning in the regional growth area, but you have to have higher densities and sewer service. So we've done this in some of our regional growth towns over the years. The towns do exercise a lot of flexibility in their zoning, still has to be consistent with Pineland's comprehensive management plan. In general, right now, the CMP has a limit on regional growth density. There's a maximum. In town, there is no maximum other than it's supposed to be consistent with the town character. So we have a variety of our town management areas, places like Hamilton, Egg Harbor City, and Woodbine, and Whiting. Those are Pinelands towns, and the densities are not controlled other than that consistency determination. But what I wanted to show you was just a little bit about numbers. And so what I've done is create a chart and give you some examples of different situations. And so this first chart, and let me just explain to you, it's got a series of columns. It has our communities, it has the fair share housing number. This will be the highest number. This is the number that the fair share people would like to see built in the state so that there's enough houses. A consult is that number that comes from the 200 towns that got together and hired a consultant. This is the Pinelands build out in the community. But we also showed you here the Pinelands build out in the sewer management areas. Because in some cases, if the town has a very large rural development area, you get a lot of houses in there, but you can't get any density. so you can't get sewer there. And so what I've shown here is, for instance, Washington Township, fair share number is 60 units. The total Pinelands build out in the town is 58. Whoa, we had a problem right to begin with. So they're assigning more affordable units than we see being built total. So that's where I get the number here. This last column is showing you the fair share number divided by the Pinelands, or by the sewer build out, and it's 103%. I mean,
So which number is that? Is that a Kinsey number?
Yes.
yes, fair share is
Is it a
Kinsey,
number?
this is a console, yes? So,
And Larry, from what you're saying before, to have 60 affordable units,
yeah,
you have to have 240.
or maybe 5 times actually, because you have your 4 market rate and your 1
Right.
it's 5 times.
240 market rate units plus 60, so
Right.
300 total units
So,
in an area that's only supposed to build out of 58.
this makes absolutely no sense to us. Yeah.
I mean, even if a town were to propose a 100% affordable project, which we've seen on occasion, Medford did one, where it's an apartment building and it's 100% affordable, so there's no market units subsidizing it. We do see those on occasion, but they're typically very high-density apartment projects. So even if Washington were to say, well, we'll accommodate 60 units in one of these 100% affordable projects, they're not going to be able to. They don't have sewer. There's probably not much vacant developable land anywhere in Washington that would support that. So it's both, the market rate, can you subsidize them, but even if you're doing 100% affordable in these towns, it's going to be nearly impossible to achieve the fair share number.
We have 53 municipalities. So 26 of our municipalities either don't have sewer or not allowed to have sewer. There's a couple towns who have chosen not to have sewer, so you get up here with the numbers a little bit. So over half of, almost exactly half of our towns do not have sewer. So I've given you 4 examples here. There's another 22 that I have numbers for. I didn't want to blind your eye with every number in the world. So that's the first set of cases. And then second set, we have 10 municipalities that have sewer service area, but they don't have any land. So if you look, I give you a couple examples here. In the Pinelands, now it starts to get a little tricky because we have a lot of communities that are split. So I'm just talking about the Pinelands here. So these Medford Lakes, for instance, is totally within the Pinelands and it has no land. So the fair share is suggesting they have to put 188 units. Where? Yes.
Can I ask a question? I mean, Larry, do you know on what basis fair share reached its numbers? I mean, it appears that they didn't look at environmental constraints at all. I mean, do you know what their criteria was?
I haven't gone through each one of them. I did in the beginning, but I sort of getting tired of going through.
Well, I mean, in broad strokes, I mean, I don't mean to be...
Yeah, they obviously projected future development. They said how much of that should be affordable. They've assigned it by county, and then they've assigned it by municipality. I'm not sure how much of a fit they did with what's actually on the ground in the municipalities. So that's my guess, but in the past, like COA has took account of constrained land. So some of the other numbers have done that. So I don't know how much Dr. Kinsey did.
Another question, if I may. Do we intend to make an appearance in these court cases to present, our view of what's going on here?
We've been talking about how to do that. Obviously, if we're asked, we would go. The question is, should we take a more affirmative? And we would, any town that calls us up, we've had probably maybe 10 communities that ask us questions, and we've given them the same numbers that I'm showing you here, and given them just numbers. So that's the extent that we've taken so far. When asked, we've given information.
Sorry.
Yes.
Real quick, getting back to that Medford scenario, I'll just use that as an example of not enough land. Is there a thought process, these people that come up with these numbers, that we're going to build high-rise apartments in Medford Lakes? And that's how you can get your 188 units?
I doubt that that's the case, because there's 566 communities. I don't think that they've gone down to the detailed level to try to implement the plans in these cases. They should have.
But knowing that there's not enough grounds to accommodate 188 units, where would your thought process be? And that's a rhetorical question,
I mean, if I was a judge and I saw this and I believed the 188 number was a fair share, I'd say Medford Lakes can't do it. So they're for sure too.
And then my next question, a follow-up question to that would be, is that when push comes to shove at the end of the day, and the 7 different courts from the seven different counties, probably seven different ideas. And I can see that, envision that happening. I really do.
One of the big questions still hanging out there is whether the courts will indeed appoint master planners.
Well, yeah, but
And,
keeping in mind
but
that right now,
that becomes the tool that the court could be using.
could, but right now, it's with the seven individual county courts.
At the moment, but the question is, they have the power to appoint a master
Well,
planner.
they got a lot of power.
And the COA, the only advantage to COA was that they worked on regions.
I understand, but that's
So
what
the
I'm
nature
trying to get at.
of the
I'm not getting to a master plan, the point that I'm trying to get at, regardless whether it's some grand Cuba master plan for all seven counties, seven individual counties, whatever the decision comes down to, that it skews our numbers and it knocks our numbers of the CMP out of the box, who wins this war at the end of the day? The courts want to force this
We
up down
will try
our
to
throats?
cooperate, try to be close. You have to remember one thing, affordable housing is a constitutional right in New Jersey. It may be unique in the 50 states. Only New Jersey has affordable housing as a right in the Constitution. So it is actually a higher law than any of the legislative laws.
So theoretically, they could mandate this is the way it's going to be, and then we have to change our regulations.
I won't make that statement, but it certainly might be.
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility, yes. That's part of our concern, and that's the reason we
Well, yeah.
generate these numbers, that's the reason we're talking to every local planner we can. If we want to make sure people have the information so that they can make whatever decisions they have to make. In the
The
end,
more planners we talk to, the more numbers we come up with.
So we have the first set of cases where 26 communities have no sewer service. We have this next where 10 communities have sewer service but no land in the Pinehurst. The other map up there is Peterborough. It has a little land in the Pinehurst, but not enough to take care of on 86 units. But it does have a lot of land outside the Pinehurst. I'm not sure it's sewer service yet. That's a detail if you want. The next
Larry, excuse me, is that 86 number for the entire town or for just the Pinehurst portion?
entire town, it hasn't been split.
Yeah, the numbers are not, they're not split. They don't recognize inside, outside. They don't acknowledge management area boundaries or sewer service area acreage or anything like that.
Obviously, if you were analyzing the town, you'd have to take that into account. We're not gonna analyze all the towns until we know what the rules are. And they keep changing, that's one problem. The next set of ones are ones that have sewer service and ones that have sufficient land, but the fair share numbers are over 20%. They're over that 4-to-1 suggested guideline I made. And I don't use examples here, Lakers and Chislehurst. Lakers has 72 assigned, Chislehurst has 115. Lakers is not totally within the final support, come pretty close to it. And so those 72 would have to be accommodated therein, and it's 35% of their build out. That's pushing the number, so that's stretching the feasibility. Who's gonna pay for those extra units? How are they gonna pay for
That
those?
percentage should be 20% or lower.
I think, but I'm not making the rules. I'm just saying that to pay for them, you have to think about that. And then Chislehurst, which is totally in alignment, has an assignment of 115, and that 115 is 32% of the build out, of their total build out of the regional growth area. And it's a very rich community, by the way. So to ask them to, take care of 32%, it seems to be a stretch too. So that's the third situation case, if you like.
I'm thinking that 20% ratio may not apply when you're talking about high-rise or mid-rise, but do mid-rise or high-rise projects conform to the character of these?
Well, people
We don't
have,
see many of them.
Yeah.
We do not
although
see-
people have been talking now. We've had some towns talking about 4-story buildings.
That 8 Carver City unit was very expensive to build,
Yeah.
Right.
and they were high-rise, and they were very expensive. They were almost like 200,000, 300,000 unit.
Wow.
So the fourth case is the one where essentially it probably could work. These are, we have 12 municipalities that have sewer service, have sufficient vacant land, and are under that 20% threshold. And one of them includes the town of where my,
Yes.
it was out of the room. That's very
Right
fortunate.
now.
I thought that.
You would dispute this.
But Winslow, Monroe, and Waterford, I offer, their numbers, the fair share numbers are fairly high, but in terms of their sewer build-out, maybe they could be made work, maybe. kind of, are those numbers up to date? You know, a lot of those sort of build-up numbers are old numbers, and we need to update them, so there's a lot of ifs and buts. But what I was trying to do was to show you the nature of the different types of situations we're gonna have just in the finance. And how complicated it can be when you start considering inside the pylons, outside the pylons, sewer service, not sewer service. And, you know, and we had one community, it's at the bottom there, okay.
Go back to the
Oh, yeah, okay. We saw the submission of Malika, and it basically says, we can't do that unless you force the pylons to allow us to have sewer service. Well, yeah, okay. That's how we do it. Sewer service in the entire pylons, and we can take care of it. And somebody has to pay for it, by the way. They don't have the sewer service. So it isn't just the density, it's who's going to build the sewer plant, et cetera, et cetera.
So where the market numbers are. So you see the Mulligan number there at the very bottom? So the fair share number assigned is 104, and that's what the township is reacting to when they submitted their paperwork most recently to the court. What they said was, we can't absorb 104 units because of the zoning that we have in place. They have villages, but they're not sewered, and they have a huge forest area, and a lot of environmental constraints. So, you know, what they've said to the court is, the 104 is not achievable unless the commission were to change the rules and allow different densities and things to happen in villages. The consult number is only 18, and that they feel they can accommodate through group homes and a variety of other options. So you see that the differences are pretty stark between the numbers. So mostly what we're seeing are towns preparing housing plans and petitioning the court based on the lower numbers. They're hoping that those will be recognized and they won't need to accommodate the higher number.
We saw one court, a suggestion was made to split the difference. Well,
Not exactly.
what's that based on? That sounds a little
scientific.
arbitrary. Okay. So you just look there, take those first two columns, add the root together, split your difference.
The judges, are they going to be superior court judges?
They are.
Yeah.
So their dockets are so full and they're so understaffed, this is going to be a nightmare.
They're granting a lot of exceptions. That's what we're seeing now.
We're like
is,
too short in
a
Atlantic
lot
County
of
and Fresno.
exceptions. and-
It's like
yeah.
Burlington too.
Now, you know, what we're afraid of, well, what happens to us? You know, if this gets done, if they certify a plan, and we haven't seen it, and it comes to us, and we look and say, this doesn't match the CMP. What are we supposed to do with that? Are we supposed to say, oh, well, I mean, we're gonna bring it to you and say it doesn't match.
I mean, I will say too, most of our towns, they've been through this before with affordable housing, you know, at some point or other in the last 20 or so years. And they're very familiar with their zoning and the finance regulations. So for the most part, we're not seeing any housing plans or proposals that really would cause a problem in terms of consistency with finance rules, because they know not to propose, you know, sewer projects in the forest area, for example. I don't think we're going to see that. What we may see are smaller zoning changes within a regional growth area or even a finance town area, but mostly a growth area where there may be some conflicts in terms of densities and accommodation of finance development credits. That's really where the conflicts are going to come in.
Yeah, the thing we're concerned with is, we can get 53 new zoning plans that we have to deal with. But if they don't certify those plans, we can start to get ad hoc builders remedies lawsuits. And Susan's been involved with several of those. They're very nice. They're very interesting.
They're very interesting.
But each one is an ad hoc case. You know, you're looking at specific sites, specific sewers, specific numbers, houses, you know, and I think we far prefer the housing plans get done by the towns when they get certified. You know, they all agree on those rather than doing it in an ad hoc building remedy case.
But if we want to get ahead of that, I think we need to get involved in these cases, or maybe get our own master to put something on the record before the court that gives the court our view. Otherwise, we're leaving it to the court without the input of this commission. And I think we need to make that input. The other thing that I think people are aware of is the constitutional provision is that you cannot use zoning to exclude affordable housing. And so, just because we have zoning in place doesn't mean that zoning meets the constitutional requirements. So I think we need to get in front of the court and present our views on this.
But we don't want to be there at the end of the game. It's far better to be at the beginning, at least make our pitch known and what the numbers are and, you know, the work with it. And we we can either do it through the certified planning process at the courts now, which is sort of strange because they don't have staff or anything, or we can wait for building permits.
But to address Ed's concern, perhaps if we put together a Highlands-wide plan, we could at least try to avoid 7 different Superior Court rulings that, ultimately is going to end up in the appellate division of the Supreme Court. But I think we could do a service to the courts if we gave them at least our views on this.
Has anybody gotten in front of the Superior Court yet? Any municipalities been in front of them yet with this?
All the plans were submitted in December 6th, and so the courts are starting to look at that. I think that the first step is, like Susan said, is to extend the protections from builders remedies on the local. So they try to get a handle on, or are they gonna hire masters, and like Ocean County closed did, they hired a master and they started to get some of their own numbers. But I'm not sure whether testimonies were taken or how.
Yeah, I don't know that we've seen any Highlands municipalities reach that level yet, but I've seen, I've got a lot of articles in the Inquirer about Morristown recently. They're definitely in the process. They're in front of Judge Bookbinder. He's hired a master who has produced another number, and they're looking for Morristown produced a housing plan based on a different number, and so they're right in the midst of all this.
And fair share, and New Jersey Builders Association, and League of Municipalities, everybody's wants to be at the table. Because these are important issues to all of them. But each one, I mean, it isn't 7 court cases, it's 566 court cases.
I think we really need to take whatever action we need to, very quickly, to protect our towns from the builders' remedies, because those are going to happen because they're very vulnerable. Exactly that.
Right, and that vulnerability has been in place for many of our towns for 30 years because they have not done housing plans or provided for affordable housing. So they're vulnerable today just as they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I
So-
don't want to make it worse.
Right, no, I agree. But some of them I think they're before the court now, whereas before they were before COA.
Yeah.
It's sort of the same, they're in the same situation, they're dealing with the same issues and the same constraints. And they're vulnerable just like they were before. So it's interesting to see a lot of the towns seem to be taking things more seriously now. And I don't know if that's because they're before the court rather than COA. But they're definitely, we're seeing towns, Highlands towns who never did anything with affordable housing before now suddenly
There was an awful lot of planning done in
participating. Yeah. Yeah.
December 6th.
I follow up on something the Commissioner was suggesting, that we get out in front of it with our own plan, but my concern is, as much as I like that idea, what kind of staff resources do we have to be able to do that? Are we looking at that as a possibility? Yes.
Yes, as we mentioned in previous meetings, as new initiatives come up, there's a resource issue. Getting in front of it in terms of perhaps weighing in with a letter saying, hey, don't forget about us, is doable. Getting in front of it with research and data and reports with current resources is probably not.
I agree with that sentiment. I think we need to get out in front of it, at least put our name out there and let them know that we've got an issue with it.
And some people understand, some don't. And also, as Susan pointed out, some of our towns have a good record on affordable housing. It isn't all of them that haven't done anything. Some of them have done absolutely nothing. So they're really going to be behind the 8 ball.
I'd like to suggest, though, that we don't necessarily have to stick to only the resources we have available. We should go looking for some money to take care of this problem, because it's a serious problem for the towns and for the people who need affordable housing. So I would suggest that there may be some ways of getting some to do this kind of work.
I was thinking along precisely the same lines. Two sources come to mind. Neither one of them may be easy, but one is private foundation funding, which we should, I think, seek. And second is state funding. And this isn't a huge issue for the state. We've had to deal with this. I would hope the state will put some resources in this. One way or another, the state's going to put resources in through the courts, through the municipalities, through us. I think we ought to have a seat at the table, and maybe we need some state resources to do that.
It's somewhat unfortunate that the COA staff has been transferred over to the Department of Community Affairs. There is staff in it. They aren't doing anything. the ex-staff, who has a lot of expertise in this area, is not doing any work.
Well, there's another opportunity that perhaps we can get staff assigned to us to help us, or, again, we're making arrangements with community fairs. I'm just blue skying, but we need resources, obviously.
Just the last pitch I wanted to make was, what can we do? One of the things we think could help a lot would be to look at the PDC enhancement rule that we started back in 2009. And it actually does 4 things that would really help us a lot to give us the flexibility to work in the town. That is what briefly mentioned. First of all, it would remove the cap on the RGA in terms of the total number of houses there. So if you want to put a few more houses in there, that's a municipal choice. So they can do that. Right now, the CMP doesn't let you do that. So more houses help you to make it more affordable. Secondly, I'm sure you all remember, we were proposing what we call a sliding scale. So the PDC assignment goes down as density goes up. So at very low densities, you have to buy a fair number of PDCs. That isn't what affordable housing is. Affordable housing tends to be the higher densities, which would have the lower assignment, which means that it works better. So that would be another change. Now, that's the opposite of what it is about, by the way. The higher density you go now, probably you have more PDCs. The third one is that we wouldn't, the rule would propose no PDCs for affordable units. So if 10% or 20% of your units were affordable, that would come out of the rule, the obligation to look at PDCs for that. Right now, that isn't the case. So sometimes we have a case where we're saying you gotta buy PDCs, and then there's a question about, well, subsidizing affordable housing, now you won't get subsidized PDCs as well. It's a little much.
That's an important one too, when you go back to those 100% affordable projects that I was talking about before. We have towns that come in and propose those, but they're in a zone where, PDCs have to be used to perhaps get to 4 or 5 units per acre. We don't have a mechanism of saying, but they're affordable, so we'll waive the PDC obligation. The CMP doesn't allow us to do that. The only way to do that is to sort of shift them to other areas in the regional growth area, and that can be very difficult to do. So that's one of the major benefits here, is that these 100% affordable projects become feasible.
And the last benefit is one that's occurred partly because as we worked through this the last couple of years, we've gotten a lot of comments from the building community that they should at least be allowed to get the density that's assigned to the zone. And it's very difficult to do that nowadays. So we look at a lot of ways that perhaps we can increase the flexibility for builders to do that, like clustering is one thing that comes to mind. And clustering, you can get the units you want. So if you get the units you want, you can get the density you want, which can help subsidize affordable housing. So it all sort of comes around. So we think that a lot of the provisions of the proposed PDC rule will help. But I just want to make that pitch.
What about the town wasn't a receiving district, or that zone wasn't a receiving district for the PDC? That they needed to put the affordable housing in?
Well, sometimes the affordable housing projects are going in commercial zones, because that's where the land is available. And so then they have to rezone, and then if they rezone, they have to absorb PDCs, and how do they absorb PDCs? So we get into a lot of things.
I'm envisioning builder's remedy suit where they're in some kind of forest area, and that's not a receiving area, and the judges.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't seen any of those. The builder's remedies that we've seen have been all regional growth area, and I think one in Hamilton and in Plymouth town area. So, yeah, we see them, they come in a commercial zone, as Larry mentioned, or they come in a low-density residential zone in the regional growth area, where it's 1 unit per acre, and they're proposing 4 or 5 units per acre. So that's typically what we've been seeing. And both of those are tricky situations to deal with, because they can both come with pretty hefty PDC obligations unless some other zoning plan can be put in place.
But Paul, you're right. If we don't help to get certified plans in, who knows what'll come down from the builder's remedy. We don't want to see projects before it's right here.
I mean, actually, to make these things work, that kind of density, I would assume that public sewer is the #1 priority.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to see this happening, sewer service area.
I think that was the last slide. I had a lot of slides up there, but I wanted you to understand the nature of the problem, how much work it could make for us, and how we need to be flexible.
I guess I think to take action on the PDC rules, you recommended that too, would be a sign of good faith to the Superior Courts that we're doing what we can to facilitate it. So
I think you'll see our schedule in the next question.
That's a really good segue. Thank you very much.
Okay. On to the update for plan review recommendations.
Did you want to? I thought we would, it's been a year or so, a little over a year since the plan review report was released, and if you recall, the last chapter in that report contained a series of recommendations based on the Commission's priorities, issues that were identified during the extensive public comment period. And so I'm just going to go over where things stand a little bit. So this is just a reminder, this is what the report looked like. It had all the different chapters in it. We reported on all the various actions and things that had occurred in this period between 2001 and 2012. Many of you served on the Plan Review Committee that met regularly prior to and after the release of the report, I think it was. We had hearings, we had public meetings, we received hundreds of public comments, all of which culminated in the release of the report in October 2014. There's a recommendations chapter, which the Commission reviewed and agreed that those were the recommendations that we wanted the staff to focus on, and so we've been using those to guide our work or our work program we said for the next 5 years, so that's 2019. And then, of course, as we've gone along after release of the report, there's always going to these other additional things come up, big and small, that prompt the need for additional amendments to the CMP. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those at the very end. So these recommendations then are the ones that are in the recommendations chapter in the report. These are in the same order as they were in the report, so they're not in any particular priority order. They were all identified as important. These first few relate to administrative and efficiency measures that were identified by the staff and the public. In this case, we needed to revise some of our fees, escrows, address solar facilities, general development plans, a whole variety of administrative and processing things that we thought were important to do. Hopefully this sounds familiar to all of you. We did draft a rule proposal. You all discussed it. And a few of those amendments were actually adopted. We expanded exemptions. We extended the duration of letters of interpretation. But most of the amendments that were in that proposal we did not proceed with. We want to take another look at the fees in case there are some increases that might be appropriate. And then we would need to discuss that with you, of course, and resubmit that proposal to the governor's office for review. We'll just go through some of these quickly. The report suggests that we implement additional efficiency and administrative improvements. Again, these are more or less contained in the proposal that you've already seen, and we would need to simply resubmit that to the governor's office. Some of these things are going to seem very minor, but they're actually rather important here. Interested person is what's defined in the CMP that needs to be changed to interested party for various legal reasons. That was also in the proposal that you saw. We need to resubmit that. Notice procedures. We need to change a number of things in the CMP to specifically allow for email communication. CMP doesn't recognize email at all right now. It refers to certified mailings, some of which we'd like to eliminate. CMP doesn't talk much about the Commission's website, certainly not at all when it comes to doing public notices. We think that's important and actually it's required based on other legislation that's been adopted in the last couple of years. Again, these were all contained in that earlier rule proposal that you saw, but we did not proceed with them. So we need to reinvigorate that and resubmit that proposal to the governor's office. And here, this is an interesting one too, amend and simplify the CMP's procedural requirements for certain municipal and county approvals. Some of those amendments were in the earlier rule proposal. More and more, we've identified a need to address other types of approvals, waivers, for example. Most waivers of strict compliance expire. They have a 5-year lifespan and expire after 5 years if the person hasn't taken their approved waiver and gone ahead and gotten a building permit. But there's this category of very old waivers that were issued before 1992 that don't have that 5-year expiration. They don't have an expiration at all. They live on. And we have seen several of them in the last 3 or 4 months, surprisingly. A waiver that was approved in the early 1980s. The house was never built, and now it's back. So we think the CMP needs to be amended to address that type of situation. And then there's a variety of other things here. Address certain municipal land use law issues, and and take a look at how long certificates of filing are valid. These are all a little trickier. We didn't write those. They weren't in the earlier proposal, so we would need to write some language, review that with you, and then again, submit that old proposal to the governor's office again. So here's some more substantive things. The Blackburn watershed. You'll recall this is something that the commission has been working on for a long, long time. The southern Lucia Medford area was the subject of some extensive regional planning efforts. We spoke to the committee last year several times about management area changes, rural development of forest area, creating a pilot program to allow for some creative clustering to occur to further protection of the area, and you all endorsed an approach in April of last year. So our next step here is to prepare rules to do that. And so our suggestion here is that we're going to try and do that, give that proposal to you all to look at this spring. So that would be, March, April time period we're talking about here. Also, one of the recommendations in the report dealt with off-road vehicle events. And this is something the Plan Review Committee met and discussed extensively in 2013 and 2014. We focused mostly on application requirements. CMP really doesn't contain much in the way of an application process for these events. These are pretty thorough events. And so the thought was we should codify what it is we're doing now. We are requiring applications. They have to submit certain information. We need to put that into the rules. So while we've been working on that, we also did design new application forms and documents that we then issue back to the Enduro clubs when they've got their routes approved. Those have been distributed and are in use already. So in some cases, there are things we're doing that aren't necessarily rule related. They're administrative, and we've taken steps to implement those. So again, you'll see the next step there is to draft a rule proposal. Largely, we'll deal with application requirements and give that to you in the spring to look at. And here's Larry's Pinelands Development Credit Enhancement proposal that he's already mentioned to you. He said 2009, but this is actually something we've been working on, I think, since 2005 or 2006 in various incarnations. But anyway, so Larry spent the last year or two discussing the PDC rule proposal with interested parties, meeting extensively with various groups and organizations to go over the proposal, listen to feedback, make some changes, try to simplify things. There's a note there that talks about possible changes to the PDC bank. That's an interesting one as well, in order to make the PDC program work better and accommodate the new enhancements. It may be that the bank needs to be more active in certain respects. So that's something we need to think about as well. So I think Larry's next step is then he's going to come back to this committee in the spring, so again, March, April, May, and go over with you the simplifications and the revisions that he's identified and recommends to the proposal. We then need to write revised language and submit that to you and to the governor's office as well. And this one deals with water supply and I guess water quality as well in response to the Cohancy study. We've been briefing you periodically over the last couple of years as that study has been completed. You can see Larry's been talking to a number of other groups, the State Water Supply Advisory Council, DRBC, other interested parties. So that's been sort of ongoing for the last few years. In terms of next steps, we're still thinking about the need to contract with USGS perhaps to refine the modeling so that we can use them here in the Pinelands area when we review applications. I think Larry's next step is to discuss some various options with a number of experts this spring. We probably then have an open public meeting to gather input. We're not talking about drafting any rules or proceeding at all until that process, gathering of information is complete. So, it'll be a little while before any kind of rules are before you for consideration, but, do you want to say anything?
No, I'm going to continue to talk to people till the spring and then have it. It's just up there. We're in a public meeting on it. Spoke to roll out different aspects and options and which way we're heading. Which is what I've been doing for the last 2 years, trying to get input and we'll come back to you. In part, we were trying to coordinate timing with the state as well, and that hasn't worked as well for us. The state policy, from a document water supply advisory, the state water supply advisory plan is on hold.
So, right, do you think we're going to be able to take any action on that in the absence of the court plan?
We hope so. That will be our recommendation, because I think we're just about ready to go. I mean, the issue is we haven't had much activity right now. I mean, there's not many people coming in and applying for new wells. At some point, if the economy turns around, maybe we will. At that point,
So we affordable housing, that could change.
It all ties together.
So we still have that, you know, if somebody comes in and asks us for a well, then we have to look at it. So the issue is, when we roll out some of the tools we found in the Cohasset study, do a better job. That's what we're doing.
This one will look familiar to all of you as well. One of the recommendations in the report was to improve the process that the commission uses when it considers memorandum of agreement. Many of you served on the MOA Policy Advisory Committee that met throughout 2015 to go over the process. Where that stands now is the committee came up with pretty much a final version of the process document that we've been using for many years. We made a few changes to it. I need to make a few additional minor tweaks to it. That'll be then shared with the MOA committee one last time to make sure they're all still in agreement with the final version, and then it will go to the full commission for endorsement, maybe as early as the February commission meeting. We'll see how quick that is, February or March. And again, it's a process document. It doesn't deal with any of the more substantive issues, anything that would need an amendment to the CMP. That's something, those issues would need to come back to this committee for review and a discussion. Digital sign technology. We haven't seen a digital sign ordinance in a while, but if you remember, there was a period of time there where they were coming in left and right, and the commission was really struggling with how to deal with them because our sign standards don't recognize new technology. So we were fortunate enough to have an intern over the summer last year who did a short research paper for us on digital sign technology and the work of other jurisdictions and various ordinances and requirements. That was very helpful. And so we're continuing to look at that and identify other options. So our hope is this spring, again, we'll be busy this spring, to share with you some options for the commission's consideration on how the CMP could address signs and new technology. This is another sort of procedural one that's in the report. Consider whether we need to amend the CMP to address OPA requirements, specifically related to survey results for threatened and endangered species and cultural resources. So something we've had in the back of our minds for years. Stacy has largely been involved in looking at what other agencies are doing. So far, it doesn't appear that any other state agencies are adopting rules related to this, but we're going to continue to think about that and coordinate perhaps with some other agencies to see whether rulemaking is necessary. Type's a little small here. So this also came out public comment procedures. There were all sorts of suggestions from the public. The major ones are noted here. We should hold, the commission should have more evening meetings, for example, more advance notice of hearings or public comment opportunities on public development applications and MOAs. Those were the major recommendations. We have, since 2014, scheduled evening meetings at least once a year for the commission. There is one scheduled this year as well. We did revise our public comment policy several years ago with respect to public development applications and waivers. That's why you see the applications come up for comments on commission meeting agendas a month prior to action, so there's plenty of time to comment. We're using our website much more frequently and email as well to provide more advance notice of hearings and public meetings on all kinds of matters. So we're going to continue to look for possible improvements. I mean, these are things we've been able to do without amending the rules. There may be some things that need to require amendment, but we think we've made some progress at least with the website, and evening meetings, and the opportunities for comment of the commission. The next few deal with vegetation, soils, threatened and endangered plants. This one is for existing roadside habitat for native and rare plants. Clean fill, your use of native soils. Robin, you may remember, came and made a presentation at a plan review committee meeting. She continues to work with Pinellas counties on these issues and is in the midst of rather ambitious work plan to try to improve the county's understanding of it. We have these existing MOAs in place with them on mowing and maintenance along county roads. And so she's working with them on that angle. And then we'll need to take a look too at whether any amendments to the CMP actually need to be made. So we're thinking about perhaps coming back to you with that in the summer. And then here another one, amend the CMP to strengthen protections for native vegetation. Right now the CMP has guidelines. This comes up occasionally with public development applications. There are guidelines on native vegetation rather than requirements. And so perhaps we need to take a look at that, revise the list of recommended grasses, that sort of thing. Robin again made a presentation on this in July 2013 and is or has drafted some amendments we're looking at, and so again that'll be this summer and we'll come back to you on that. And here again, threatened and endangered species survey requirements, there was a recommendation that we reduce or eliminate those requirements in regional growth areas, for example, where growth is actually designated by the CMP. A lot of suggestions that we should amend the list of protected plants to include some additional species of concern, that's what PDP calls them, and perhaps establish more standardized protocols for plant surveys. So we are working on that, at least a couple of those things, talking about the need for increased protection of plants, trying to execute or finalize and execute the plant data sharing agreement with DEP, so at least we're all using the same information, and continuing to evaluate the survey protocols and survey requirements. We're going to continue to do that as well. Stormwater management's another one that's every year this comes up. Ed spends a lot of time coordinating with DEP and municipalities and various committees that he serves on. There was a 2015 assessment done by the New Jersey Builders Association of stormwater infiltration BMPs, and the result of that was that, to paraphrase, it seems that our new stormwater standards are working in the basins that they looked at in the Pinelands area, so that's good news. Nevertheless, we'll continue to try to identify improved stormwater measures and coordinate with the other agencies. But we don't project that we're going to have any proposals or amendments before you until the latter part of this year. And climate change. This was also one of the last recommendations in the plan review report, develop rules and strategies to address climate change and then the CMP. So right now, what we've been spending the last many months doing, a number of the staff are monitoring and looking at the work of other agencies. We list a couple here, Barnegat Bay Partnership, Rutgers, there are others, Long Island Pine Barrens, I think we mentioned the other day, to look at strategies and what they're doing to see if any of that could be applied in the Pinelands. As a next step, our suggestion is that we hold an open public meeting to gather specific suggestions about how the CMP could be amended to address climate change. And then after that, after we have a good list of options and recommendations, come back to this committee so that you can all discuss them and prioritize or come up with your own suggestions that for us to research and take a look at.
One last question, there's one I'd like to mention. I know that we had the state's climatologist here giving a presentation as part of the science series. And I think one would be very interested in having, in requesting whether the climatologist would be willing to come back and repeat that presentation, have a commission, so we commissioners could hear it. It wasn't always convenient for the commissioner to get to the science presentations. And so the public could hear it, and ideally allow that to happen prior to the open public meeting, so the public could get the benefit of the information that the climatologist has to share with us.
Chairman, Paul did tape that. And I think we put it on the
Right, I know that's on the website.
Yeah, it's a very large file, too big to post to the web. But in other news related to that, he is speaking at the short course of the presentation on March 12th. We're having a second presentation as well, from a different person who Rutgers on the line.
And we're almost at the end. So this is the last slide. So I mentioned at the beginning that in the last year or so, the need for additional CMP amendments, of course, has come up. Here are just a few. The septic pilot program, we will call, we're still evaluating a number number of systems, one of which is the FAST technology. We're ready to recommend that the FAST technology be graduated from the pilot program, that's the good news, and authorized for use on,
One way of putting it.
yeah, authorized for use on 1.5 acre lots. That's what's been demonstrated through the pilot program to be necessary to meet the CMP's water quality standards. So we'd very much like to get that done, release them from the pilot program. Septic management, we've had standards in the CMP for the pilot program systems for a number of years. DEP also has standards, so we run into this issue of why we both have standards and requirements. So we're thinking about whether or not we need to retain ours if there's also statewide standards. That third one, revise the definition of recreational facility low intensity in response to the recently passed legislation. Obviously, that's a major concern and of interest to a lot of people right now. That's the legislation that was adopted to allow field sports on in the agricultural production area. So we need to amend the CMP to change the definition and perhaps take a look at language in the agricultural production area, permitted uses section to make sure that everything is going to work together. Maybe take a look at the deed restriction language for the PDC program that applies in the agricultural production area, all the different terms that are used. We need to make sure that everything is consistent. And then the next one is we still have on here establish the agricultural pilot program. That's what Ed's committee was meeting about for the better part of the year. We need to think about whether the commission still wants to pursue that. Perhaps we don't need a pilot program. Perhaps it's enough to amend the CMP to deal with some specific situations, not recreation, but other activities that are occurring on the farms in the Pinelands area. So that's still on our list of things we need to think about sooner rather than later. And then some other ones here. This is procedural, but this is another procedural one. This one, amend the CMP's procedures for commission review and approval of applications submitted by public utilities that qualify for that preemption from the municipal land use law, and so that they don't have to get municipal approval. There's a gap that we've identified in the regulations, and we do have some language that we can suggest to the commission for its consideration if you would be interested in changing procedures for certain types of applications. And then this final one is one that's been identified by the project review staff over time. We have an issue when we get applications for commercial uses in the non-sewer service area. So for example, a restaurant in a rural development area, there's an issue in terms of how we calculate septic solution. We'd like to be able to base that on average, not maximum flow values. But right now, the references in the CMP require that we use maximum flow values, and it's become a real problem. So it's a small change, but nevertheless very important to the staff and to applicants. And there are more, but those are sort of the highlights of the bigger things we've identified over the last year or so. And that, I think, is it. So really, we just wanted to give you an idea of what we're working on, because it's a lot, and where things stand, and the recommended sort of schedule for moving forward. So you'll be hearing more about many of these things in the next couple of months to pass you with specific language and rules for you to look at.
I congratulate you on your hard work. And also, the plan review was not futile.
Right.
On top of that, though, what I wanted to really ask you was, in dealing with the agricultural definitions and stuff, we have to deal with what the state is doing also. So that we don't come out.
Right. So maybe one of the things you're referring to, there's another bill passed that deals with, it's called the Rural Micro Enterprise Zone Bill, which would allow non-agriculturally related businesses to be located in existing structures on preserved farms. Our reading of the bill is that really doesn't apply specifically to preserved farms in the Pinelands area. But it's something the commission should look at and think about. And that's all part of this.
Somehow or other, we have to
Right.
coordinate.
We should coordinate, and we should take a look at whether there's provisions in that bill that would make sense here as well. Or maybe not, but perhaps there are some things.
Maybe not, maybe
not, but perhaps there's some things we'd like to do here too, so that we're a little more consistent with this state.
Thank you. I had one other question. In the question mention county roads, but you don't ever mention municipal.
Right, so, yeah, that was on purpose. The memorandum of agreement that we have in place are, right now for the roadside EMPs and maintenance are with counties only. We haven't taken the step yet of doing that with municipalities. It's on our list of things we'd like to do. I think right now we have
Enough on your plate.
enough dealing with the counties. It's not an easy thing. The agreements themselves would be the same, the language would be the same, but it's implementation and education and working with all those different jurisdictions. I think right now, the counties are keeping us busy.
I just thought that somewhere in the discussion, we could just mention municipal roads, but
Sure.
without, we're not really actively working with the municipalities one at a time to do that.
Okay.
And I don't know how you say that, but might be helpful.
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate it. All right, next on the agenda, we have the discussion of DEP's motorized access plan for Portland State Forest. Now, earlier this month, we had Assistant Commissioner of DEP, Borson, come before the commission and explain to us that the motorized action plan is being reopened by DEP. And looked at again. He invited our input as the commission. So I asked staff to put this item on so we could have some consideration and some discussion on it and hear from the public. If you wanted to preface this with.
I would just say that we have gotten, not significant compared to other things, but input from various advocacy groups and interested members of the public. We did not share those with the commissioners because we got a lot. We knew that we would have public discussion today. Also, I think we also heard from, I don't know the number one, but maybe 8 or 9 finance municipalities who have passed ordinances on this matter. So there's a lot of conversation. I'm also aware, although I'm not sure I was able to access it, that the Department of Environmental Protection sent a follow-up email to the commissioners on this matter,
Yes.
just basically reiterating.
Summarizing the Assistant Commissioner's points.
Right, and that it is the department's lead. When they were here, they welcomed our input, and we also, that's sort of our goal here, is to work cooperatively with them on their process.
But the fact of the matter is that we basically have a chance to say to DEP, don't go here or don't go there, but that's about it. We don't have any map of our own.
We have been unable, you're talking about sort of the reference in the CMP to a map from 1982. We have been unable to find any such map here. We thought maybe you had it.
Maybe somewhere in
That's
the
total.
drawer.
But we don't have one. And no one seems to remember if there ever was one. The Department of Environmental Protection was attempting to do one based on historic aerials. I don't know where they are with that project, but they were going to try to come up with something. But that wouldn't be our map. That would be something that they would base on aerial photography of just what roads existed in '82. And the CMP does have that provision, and then, the CMP also has language that does give the commission the authority, in consultation with DEP, from time to time, to close roads, in public land.
Couldn't have been vaguer.
Well, based on other things we've seen in the CMP, I think it probably could have been bigger, but that language is there. So there's two pieces, there's two distinct statements in the CMP, one based on a map we don't have, and the other saying, based on that map, if we wanted to close other things in consultation with DEP, we could do that.
Yeah, and all we can do is talk to DEP,
Yes.
period.
And it's my understanding that they've, for lack of a better term, pulled the plan after their stakeholder meetings. They decided to table this just to continue their enforcement and current operations that are going on right now. So we don't have a plan in front of us from DEP to comment on because they pulled it.
Right. The original map has been pulled, DEP engaged in the stakeholder process, and Commissioner Bonasian was here, he indicated there would be more of that. But yeah, we have nothing. They haven't put anything else out that I know of.
So I'm gonna reserve comment until I see something black and white in front of me, so what other comments you're looking for?
I was just going to suggest this, since I know the large contingent of the public that is here today is interested in this issue, and since our next agenda item is public comment, but perhaps we could bifurcate the public comment, allow people who are interested in commenting on this issue to do so, to go first. Let's hear those comments, and then when those comments are concluded, we can go to general public comment, so we can try to keep that issue singularly considered. I thought though before I go to that, I could open up if there are any commissioners that wanted to make any comments now about this, that you're welcome to do so. And it's kind of premature. As you said, Commissioner, we don't have the EP's plan in front of us. We just know that this is a contentious issue. I mean, there are very strong feelings on both sides of this issue, and it's our job as commissioners to try to come up with reasonable regulations that protect the interests of the public while also protecting the pinelands. So it's my intent as chair of this committee that we should formulate a recommendation to the full commission that the commission could then deliberate upon and ideally pass on to the DEP as our recommendation for what their action should be. So with that, at this point, if there are any commissioners that want to offer comments.
I just want to repeat, this commission does not have veto power over the Morton
Correct.
plan. In fact, we don't even have a plan in front of us, or just as an informational document. So people in the audience should understand that we are not in a position to do much of anything about this at this point.
Commissioner White?
With all due respect, Commissioner Ashman, I think we do have the authority for the CMP to make some designations. And in light of what we heard from Dr. DeVito at the last meeting about the destruction going on in Morton State Parks and elsewhere, I think we should look at what our options are. And one of the things that I think we might want to consider is taking them out to DEP as withdrawn and reconsidering whether we want to propose it. But that's just one option. I'm concerned about the destruction going on and our authority and ability to do something about it.
Mark, I just,
Commissioner Lynch?
I keep hearing about Morton State Forest. I guess my question is just a question. Are we experiencing any of these issues in any other state forests? Or is this all about Morton? And it seems to be, whether it's pro-recreation or close to the roads, that's not my question. My question is, are we experiencing similar issues in other state forests? And is there going to be a motorized access plan? Because I don't see the DEP doing anything in the near future, personally.
Yeah. Well, the answer is yes. We are seeing impacts throughout all the state parks, or many of the state parks. I guess the way I'm looking at this is the commission has responsibility for the entire Pinelands area, and we should be submitting advice to the DEP based on not just a blanket view of Morton State Forest, but what we think is reasonable and sensible as applied broadly across the Pinelands.
Being from the area I'm from, I'm more familiar with Morton State Forest. That's a lot of people in the public are as well. So that's, that's what we see, in Morton,
Yeah.
So I just a question, yes.
Commissioner Glad?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, after listening to Dr. DeVito and thinking about the real problem, I don't think it's the general ATV and hunters and public that visit. I think it's the renegades at night. I think he was correct. And I don't think mapping historically or present are going to be the answer. I think it's going to be enforcement. And I think our biggest answer or question or what we could bring to the DEP is can you get more enforcement? Whether or not they have the resources, I'm not sure. But all this mapping, I'm not so sure it's worthwhile. I think the main problems happen, deep at night with a few renegades that are ruining it for everybody. So I'm not so sure, spending all this time when the DEP really isn't going to do anything anyway. If we can at least recommend some rangers at nighttime especially, or weekends or whenever this is happening, we're not going to do any good.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that point. I think that on the strength of what we heard already from Dr. DeVito, as many commissioners have reiterated, we know that enforcement is going to be a key issue. And a key part of whatever we advise.
I don't think that's a question, but, to follow up, the assistant commissioner, I can't pronounce his name, but for him to believe that we may get local assistance through local police departments,
That's not been the history.
that is not going to happen. There's no police department that's going to run through state forests with their cars, trying to track down these renegades that are destroying the forest. State police ain't going to do it either. That's just not. And why he mentioned that is just boggles my mind.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, this is certainly a big management issue. And there has to be cooperation, I think, between all of the groups interested in preserving the vinelands, including people that want to ride their vehicles in Warden State and other areas, and people that are interested in preserving the wetlands and other endangered areas. We have to cooperate, work together to preserve what's best for the pinelands. And I think probably most of us are in agreement with that. And you mentioned the renegade groups. Maybe it's education, certainly it's enforcement. And if there was a way to do more in the education realm, I think that would be helpful. Maybe that's one of the things we can do at this point without inflaming the situation. But I think for the most part, everybody that is interested in the pinelands, visits the pinelands, visits Gordon State Forest, want what's best for them. We all have our point of view. We all have our point of view of what is enjoyment within Gordon State Forest, and we're all entitled to, as residents of New Jersey, are entitled to be able to use Gordon State Forest. But we have to also make sure that we leave something for next generations and for others that want to use it maybe a more passive way. So I think it's cooperation, it's looking at the whole picture and trying to come up with some solutions. I think when the Enduro riders came in a while back, we came up with a solution with dealing with people that had different routes for these rallies. I hope we can do something similar with this situation.
Well put, Commissioner. It's obviously a question of balance, and we don't want to put the pinelands under a glass jar and admire it from afar. We want people to be able to get into the pinelands and appreciate it. But we also have the obligation to preserve the pinelands as it is, so that we can enjoy it and so future generations can enjoy it. So with that in mind, if no other commissioners have anything they want to say, I'd like to, for the purposes of this issue, turn it open to public comment. Yes, we have a microphone over here. Step forward, identify yourself.
If I had now,
Just give it to Mr. Rosen.
That's what I was thinking I was going to say. Sure.
Thank you. Before you start, sir, I'm just going to say, I do have a list. People did sign up to speak, and what I'll do is after this gentleman speaks, I'll go through the list, call names. If you are here to speak on this issue, please come forward. If you're not, please say so. We'll pray for the second part of public comment. All right? Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Jason Howell, Pinelands Preservation Alliance. I just want to briefly introduce myself. I have a deep family history in the Pine Barrens and Portland State Forest. In particular, my great-great-grandfather was born at Hampton Park, also known as Hampton Furnace. My family worked at Martin Village and lived at Bastow. Both my grandparents are buried at Pleasant Hill Cemetery, paternal. I have been surveying and documenting these off-road vehicle sites. When I last spoke to you, I had reported 123 sites. We are now up to 151 sites in the Pinelands, and this ranges from one track to complete and utter destruction. And if you observe some of these photos, you'll see just a portion of what I've been finding. And it's very distressing to me, personally, environmentally, and culturally. Now, the DEP, their action to reopen some of these wetland roads, I think is deeply unconscionable. These paths are a direct line for mudders and off-roaders to access intermittent ponds and intermittent stream crossings. This problem is just pervasive to the extent that there's no area in the forest that has not seen damage except areas far away from roadways. Now, the opponents to managed access claim that enforcement is the only real way to solve this problem. But you'll see in those photos, many of those areas are completely unenforceable. These roads are not able to be accessed by any police vehicle that's also able to ride on the street. They're just mudding zones for monster trucks. Now, with that being said, when I was shown some of these areas by my mother, they were in extremely good condition. Now when I have to go and show my nieces and nephews, I have to say these used to be beautiful places. And now these off-roaders and mudders have turned them into just wastelands. And I find this deeply troubling. I believe it's your responsibility as the Pinelands Commission to take up where the DEP has fell short and protect this area that we all hold so dear. Now, many in this room are good people, but they may not understand the full extent of this damage like I do. And I thank you for looking into this issue, and I hope you join me in working to preserve this place.
Thank you, Mr. Hamlin. Okay. Start Joseph Springer.
Hey, my name is Joseph Springer. I'm a longtime resident of the Pinelands in Southampton Township. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to bring my views on the Pinelands Commission's dealings with the Forest Service. I listened to the tape with Mr. Bernasian that you had last week, and I was encouraged when you said that you would like to be a stakeholder in future policy decisions that they're making. I've met with Mr. Abermuller and Mr. Bernasian in previous meetings, and it's interesting. In those meetings, I would bring up the Pinelands Commission and the CMP, at which point they would explain to me that it has no bearing on any of their policies. I don't think I'm telling you anything new. I would like to encourage you because you're guided by the CMP, which has a very strong recreation element. And in the case of my sport, enduros, you recognize 561 miles of enduro trails. And you recognize the East Coast Enduro Association as a responsible organization representing and organizing those sports. Also, as far as the map goes, for forest closure, which is a better title for it, the Pinelands Comprehensive Master Plan lists just riding through the forest as the third most popular recreation. You can take a look in your CMP. For these reasons, we wanted to encourage you to participate, but make as a condition for your participation that they adopt the same vision that you have as expressed in the CMP as their vision, and recognize that recreation in this very crowded state is important, especially in these pinelands where it's a traditional sport, that is our enduros. Just as an aside, on the other subject of groundwater, you may want to take a look at Southampton Township's high-quality groundwater ordinance. I'd be glad to help you out on that. And it uses USGS. Brian Zord knows how to get in touch with me.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Okay, Steve Salisbury.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to address this group. My name is Steve Salisbury. I work for the American Motorcyclist Association. Founded in 1924, the American Motorcyclist Association, or AMA, has well over 200,000 members, enthusiast members nationwide. Our mission is to promote the motorcycle lifestyle and protect the future of motorcycling. We write the competition and organizational and safety rules that groups like the East Coast Enduro Association use in New Jersey and elsewhere to hold both timekeeping and recreational events. I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and graduated high school in Flemington. My 4 grandparents, and now my father, are all buried here in New Jersey. I hold a degree in forest management from the University of Maine and worked as a professional forester. I was also a master tread trainer with the national nonprofit Tread Lightly and worked with the state of Maine project selection team for the Recreational Trails Program, which returns federal gasoline taxes paid by off-highway recreationists to the states for both motorized and non-motorized trail development and maintenance. I currently represent the AMA on the Coalition for Recreational Trails, which is a federation of national and regional trail-related organizations whose members work together to build awareness and understanding of the Recreational Trails Program. The AMA appreciates the Pineland Commission's longtime positive relationship with New Jersey's organized off-highway motorcycle community. You are probably aware that organized motorcycle events have been held continuously in the Pinelands since 1934, and both motorized trails and events are an integral part of the CMP, as Joe said. The AMA finds that misconceptions often keep resource managers and decision makers from reaching out to organized motorized users. In fact, motorized trail users have had a wide range of significant documented successes nationwide as volunteers working cooperatively with other trail users. Like the photos that you got a second ago, I'm going to offer a reprint from an article from our monthly magazine, American Motorcyclist, which provides details on motorized trail ambassador programs in 4 states. Ambassadors are trained by and work closely with state land management agencies and law enforcement, and thanks to being enthusiasts themselves, can legitimately use both positive and negative peer pressure with other enthusiasts. The AMA believes it's critically important that the Pinelands Commission be a stakeholder in any future motorized access plan for New Jersey's southern forests. In the same way that the AMA, ECEA, individual power sports clubs, and the breadth of New Jersey non-motorized enthusiast groups should be and should have been last fall. The range of failures of the rescinded motorized access plan, from proposing road closures which have long proven ineffective without increased enforcement, to operating entirely without stakeholder input, will not soon be forgotten by users of the forest. When future regulations that affect us and careful adherence to the Recreational Trails Program are considered by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, I look forward to working alongside the Pinelands Commission as fellow stakeholders. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Tom, Ed.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Just for some of the commissioners who may not know, I'm actually the liaison to the Pinelands Commission for the East Coast Enduro Association. I've come and spoken to the staff about the sport of enduros. I also served as the chairman for the New Jersey Trail Lovers Coalition when it existed, and many of the people in the room here today were members of the New Jersey Trail Lovers Coalition. The coalition represented a wide swath of forest users, and we tried to coordinate so everyone was aware of what everyone else was doing. We didn't have overlapping events. We didn't have people ending up in the same place at the same time with different agendas. But one of the things that we did was to help form a labor party for Superintendent Auermuller to close Quarter Mile and hang signage on all the roads that went into Quarter Mile. And I would just like to point out to Commissioner Lloyd that road closures seem like a great weapon to use until you've been in the position that we've been in when you go out and you close something, which was actually never really open. Quarter mile isn't a road, it never was a road. It was always closed. The signs don't do anything. They become marks of merit for the scofflaws, if you will. They're challenges. Can we get past this? Can we achieve this? I would love it if we could go back out and return Quarter Mile to its original pristine form. I have offered volunteer parties to Superintendent Mueller, and I believe you will remember Assistant Commissioner Bornasian actually mentioned one of the great areas the DEP dropped the ball in was not accessing the volunteer base that was available to them. I represented a number of that volunteer base. I have sadly seen that this prohibition thing doesn't work. And when we say we want more law enforcement, it shouldn't be dismissed as that's something to hide behind. It really is the only effective way to protect the forest. And that's really all I want to say is that when you go into this, absolutely, we need you to be a stakeholder. We need the CMP represented in the room as the map is discussed. And the map is a pilot program. It's a legislative and regulatory responsibility of the DEP to create a map for each and every one of the state forests. So this is just the beginning, and you need to be part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Chase.
Good morning. Chris Chase, New Jersey Conservation Foundation, also a resident of Hampton. Begin, I would like to say on behalf of our organization, Commissioner Lobauer, it's been a pleasure to watch your leadership and your guiding hand on the tiller for those years. And welcome, Chairman Erler. Looking forward to working with you in the future as well. So I just want to bring up a couple points with respect to our experience, both in this issue specifically in Wharton State Forest and more broadly. You may all recall that back in about 15 years ago, New Jersey Conservation Foundation had an MOA with the Commission and also with Woodland Township to open up the off-road vehicle park and establish that in Woodland Township. We needed an MOA because expressly it was written into that document and referencing your rules is that such activities were not permissible in the preservation area of Pines. So we needed special permission for a 10-year window to do that. That experiment unfortunately was not successful in its intended outcome, but nonetheless, I think it should point out that if we wanted to actively promote that activity, it required commission intervention and ultimately an MOA to do so. I would invite any commissioner that is interested in such a thing. It's good to hear lots of opinions from the field, but it's actually better to be in the field. Neat photographs are great, but I would encourage, as we've done with many of the DEP staff and others, to go to areas. And I want to point out that while some roads and trails were closed, that's one thing, but also, and this I do actually, with all due respect to Assistant Commissioner Bornasian, challenge him, that many environmental areas, essentially dead-end mud holes that used to have signs, those signs were in fact removed. They were not roads, they were not access to any other, they were not to get from point A to point B, they were simply to access mud, which used to be a spund or some other wetland area. So during the period of time last summer and fall, when those signs were in place, we had documented that the activity in those areas had dramatically decreased. Knuckleheads will always go past signs, but the enforcement issue, as documented in the DEP regs, is hinged upon, quote, designated roads. Without designation of roads, which we don't have right now, essentially there is no designation, so by default, almost every area is open, there is almost nothing to enforce. So while those signs certainly will be disregarded by folks that don't give a damn about them, it at least provides the legal notice that's required to enforce that designation. So even if they get run over and torn up, listen, we deal with this. We manage 22,000 acres across the state. We replace signs constantly because of knuckleheads. However, those signs are important when we go to court and try to enforce against either trespass or vandalism because we provided that due notice. And the last thing I wanted to mention with respect to a second MOA is that currently DEP maintains their roads on what I believe is an expired MOA. And that MOA allows them to do all sorts of road maintenance, which they've been doing for quite some time. There's a caveat in there, though. It's not a blanket permission. They do have to come back to the commission when those activities enter into a regulated area, like a wetland or a wetland transition area. Our analysis of the road network that we provided for you last meeting shows that the overwhelming majority of the roads, particularly the ones that were closed by the map, not so much by the ones that were designated open, are in those areas. So if they are to go and either grade, alter vegetation, bring in excess fill, which they often have to do to fill mud holes, I would argue that those are all regulated activities, not under any recreation issue, but with regard to regulated activities within wetlands. And those should be brought to you when they plan to do those activities on those roads so you can evaluate them. Right now, the operating assumption is because of that MOA, any road activity is in fact permissible and they proceed to do so. So I consider you to look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paco Spano.
I'm with the East Coast Enduro Association. I would just like to point out that 8 townships wrote resolutions against the map. And if the DEP had not stopped the map, that there would be many, many more. I personally made 2 townships aware of it. That's the only one I want to bring up, is that many townships in the state sided against the map. And as I said, would it continued, it would have been many, many more. And they were our first line of defense against the map. If they didn't step forward, maybe we'd have a map in place and then people wouldn't have the opportunity to see the state forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Tom Turlich.
How you doing? Tom Turlich from New Gretna, and I'm here representing the New Jersey Sporting Dog Alliance. We basically are fox hunters, houndsmen that run in the pines. It's an activity that's been going on in the pines since the turn of the 19th century. At one time it was done to sustain the lifestyle of the people, and now it's a sport. It's been a sport for quite some time. There's many people that do it in the forest. It's getting larger now because of the technology we have to run our hounds. When I say technology, I'm talking about GPS tracking systems. We know where our hounds are at all time. They cover large areas, chasing our quarry, and we can get to them at any time. But the loss of this access will put our sport and our animals, our dogs, in jeopardy, okay? The jeopardy could be a paved road, okay? The jeopardy could be a trap, which now legal in the state of New Jersey is a snare, okay? A snare is basically a restraint around an animal's neck that holds it there until you come to dispatch it, or if it's dispatched itself. It's a common occurrence, okay, for our dogs to get caught in snares, because right now the popularity of trapping coyotes, which is a very big problem in the pines, has gotten very large. So the woods are filled with snares. And I am a legal trapper. I'm a licensed trapper. I have no problem with trap. But the problem we will have is if we don't have the access to retrieve our dogs or get to them when they're in distress. Dogs have been lost, dogs have been injured, and the problem would be losing our access, basically losing the historical culture of running hounds and use of other sporting dogs in the forest. And that's basically what our argument is. We have a large membership. Some of them are 3- and 4-generation hunters in the forest. It's been a large sport for a long time, and we don't want to lose it. And I just wish you would consider us as part of the cultural history and what went on in the pines since the turn of the 19th century. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Apollonia Gali.
morning. My name is Apollonia Gailey. Most people know me by my nickname Pola. I'm a resident of Medford, New Jersey, and I represent the New Jersey State Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs, which I'm the president. It was founded in 1935, and I'm also secretary to Open Trails New Jersey, which is relatively new in 2015. Our missions coalesce because what we do is we care about the natural resources of all types here in New Jersey and the ability for our constituents to use them. In the Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs, I represent 150,000 sportsmen, both hunters, anglers, trappers, people who use the woods in a variety of ways. And most people forget, we also represent the equestrian, the horse riders who are using our forest and our natural resources. I did not have a prepared statement because I wanted to hear what you had to say in response to the presentation, which was a surprise to everyone and was a little different. Our concerns, I was notified of the Motorized Access Plan, and that's what MAP stands for, the Motorized Access Plan, that came about in July of 2015, and I was notified by its implementation. My constituents were blowing up my phone and my email because they were concerned about the signs of the closures, and a document that was put online that did not have the word draft, but said it was your responsibility to know what's closed and what's not, or you could be punishable by law. That was a big concern because there was no stakeholder input from our perspective. So I reached out to Superintendent Aramuller to find out what was going on, and I was shocked by a couple of different things. One was he suggested that my senior hunters give up hunting or try something different if they can't walk. And the other was the suggestion that my son's child, his second child, was too young, and perhaps he needed to wait another 7 years before going back into Wharton. That was not an appropriate answer for me or my son. There was a lot of, or I should say the opposite, there was no transparency, no discussion. Because I had a different relationship through my work with Superintendent Aramuller's family, I asked him, why didn't you come to me as president of the Federation and we could have had these discussions? I have meetings in 21 counties. We represent a large contingency of clubs, and he informed me that he was not allowed. And I find that almost abhorrent because it's a public resource and we all should work together. And in conservation and volunteering, there's so many different things that we could have approached before we got to this point. And there's a lot of ideas that have come out of both the groups, Open Trails New Jersey, which we've not had any response yet from the superintendent. We're working on it. We were encouraged by the response by the DEP executive staff. This is not, I mean, certainly we care about the resource, and I commend each of you for the work that you do as the Pinelands Commission, and I think that that's what we need to look at. There was no maintenance for many, many years in Wharton State Forest. Mother Nature, as well as the renegades, do a lot of damage, and we need to be responsive, we need to be aware because our world is changing in so many ways, that we need to be able to be resourceful, think outside the box, use the people who want to help. Let us help you find those resources. You know, you can fix anything as long as you have sufficient time, money, and people to get it done, but you have to start somewhere. And I really appreciate most of what you said. I did not have an opportunity, I did not know that Assistant Commissioner Bernasian would have been here, or perhaps I could have brought some information. I volunteer and have for many, many years with the Division of Fish and Wildlife and the Wildlife Conservation Board. Prior to the Motorized Access Plan, really no other plan had been developed or attempted. And that's what we would like to do. You know, there's one thing, I'm a grandmother, and I put everything in line of real life. If I'm gaining weight, I'm gonna try something before I go on a drastic diet. I'm not gonna stop eating because I've gained 10 pounds. I'm gonna do something a little different. And I think that that's what we should do. And especially like Mr. Turlish has said, hunters use the roads in a lot of different ways. place when they're hunting, when they're retrieving their quarry, when they're retrieving their animals. And so a dead-end road may mean nothing to someone else except maybe a puddle at the end. But a dead-end road to me may mean a quiet place where I can sit underneath a tree with my drawing pad. Whether I'm hunting, scouting, or whatever I'm doing, it could mean something entirely different to me and my constituents. So all that I ask is, as we go forward, please, I too, when I realized that the Pinelands Commission was not involved in part of that program, we all need to be involved, because there is no one person is going to be 100% happy, but no solution is going to be reached unless we all work together and respect one another and are courteous. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Ms. Gaines. Joseph, Doug? Google?
That's close enough.
It was
I'm
for
sorry, I
Google.
couldn't read it very well.
Mr. Google.
Just so you know what the map is, that is the map that they proposed, but only with the yellow lines. All the red lines are the roads that they wanted to close that they didn't make, so you could see when you went on the website. In my judgment, a very deceptive practice. So this shows all the roads up north. So we start off right. Hello, thank you for affording me the time to speak. My name is Joe Duval. I'm a resident of Winslow Township, Camden County, which borders Warden State Forest. Warden State Forest has been a part of my life since I was a young boy right up to today. My family and I have walked, hiked, mushroomed, picked cranberries, hunted, fished, farmed, motorcycled, canoed, explored, cut firewood, and many other activities in Warden. I'm a conservationist who vehemently opposes anyone who damages our forest. I'm a strong supporter of all responsible users of our Warden forest. When we, the responsible users of Warden, were blindsided by the DEP with sudden road closures, the cutting of live trees to close some of the roads, and the MAP plan to close more than 50% of established roads in Warden Forest, I got involved. I quickly learned that the DEP received $600,000 to repair and maintain Warden's roads. These federal monies would repair and maintain roads, not close roads. On that issue, I still believe someone should be held accountable for the cutting of live trees and the misuse of the federal grant monies. The first several meetings I attended, it quickly became obvious to me that DEP representatives were willing to say and do anything to force the MAP plan on us. At a Woodford meeting, they gave a public presentation showing 2 or 3 areas of damage. And as soon as they completed the presentation, the presenter quickly closed his laptop, gave no explanation, and walked lockstep out of the meeting with approximately 12 other DEP personnel. Mr. Alamule, in the first several meetings, advised that the roads were being closed because of illegal off-road activities, and they were ruining Warden. As time went on, he began to include 100% legal vehicles as a huge part of the damage to Warden. I believe this change in tactics was due to the fact that the amount of damage in Warden was such a small percentage, less than 0.5% of Warden's total surface area. And most of the roads they wanted to close did not have serious damage or were not true wetlands. He was banking on to make his case. To put things into perspective, Warden consists of 122,880 acres. Warden's 600 plus miles of roads, plus the damaged areas, and let me make the point, I'm opposed to anyone who damages or damaged areas in our forest. But adding them all together, they equal less than 1% of the total Warden's surface area. So there's no way that this damage is ruining all of Warden. We want to stop the damage, true, but it's not ruining all of Warden. Mr. Oliver later refrained from using the term Warden State Forest as being ruined. Mr. Oliver told us that most roads being closed were never intended to be roads, and most were old fire lines. We quickly showed the maps, some dating back as far as the 1800s, showing most, if not all, the roads. The DEP later admitted that much of the degraded road conditions of Warden were because of little or no maintenance. They also admitted that enforcement of legal off-road activities has been far less than adequate. in this particular area for my professional help with this issue. Still waiting to see if they'll take me up on it, because I can't cure the entire problem. There's no doubt in my mind that I can show them ways to solve most of the problem with the people who are damaging our forests.
Excuse me, would you care to elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, that's clearly the crux of what we're talking about.
Oh, sorry, I had 25 and a half years of my former career as a trooper of the state. So I have that experience, and I've offered different ways to go about it. I can't solve the world, I can't make the world perfect, but I think I can make it one heck of a lot better in more of the forest. So that would be the reasoning, sir.
Do you think there are enforcement options that are available to the state?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
There's very inexpensive options that are available to the state. We don't need to, and when I heard the other people speak about it, I agree with 100%. You know, the state park police, if guided in the right directions, can put a big hurting on the people who are damaging our forests. If they want to put the effort into it, they can. One of the simple solutions is real-time trail cams in the damaged areas. They can see what's happening, when it's happening, to set up people to go there at specific times to catch these people. It's not perfect. It's not going to solve all our problems, but it can work. And to try and, in fact, one of the state park people that I spoke to, a nice guy, but he gave me more excuses than he gave me answers. If you're not going to find solutions, you're not going to solve the problem. One of the things he wanted to do was buy some expensive drone with some fancy camera that spins around, but we don't need all that to waste money. There's simple solutions for these simple problems. There is.
I apologize for interrupting your statement, but I appreciate your insight.
Hopefully I'll get back on track. We were told that the map was developed with lots of research and input from various groups. It was later learned that activist groups, which I call preservationists, that's my personal opinion, had a seat at the table reference to the map while the public was left out in the cold. The map would cut off thousands of acres to responsible users if it were implemented. It took the DEP months to change course in the map, and allegedly will be starting from scratch, incorporating input from the public. Most of the responsible users of Wharton have repeatedly asked the DEP, with our help, to set a fair and reasonable criteria for the closure of any road in any state forest. And that is the answer, a reasonable criteria that we can see, touch, and use. Blanket closures of roads hurts only the responsible users, not the legal people, the illegal people. The illegal people will still do what they do. We have repeatedly asked the DEP to start enforcing and protecting our forests from illegal users who damage our forests. Any closures of roads will not stop the illegals, but proper enforcement will. Now, why am I here today? Because yesterday I received a call from Ms. Kirkflew, the DEP advised at this meeting, and that the DEP stance on the issue of that is that they are going to start from scratch and utilize the public's input. I never before received a courtesy call from the DEP, so I was hoping someone here could tell me the true motive of this call, because this makes no sense to me. In the prep for this meeting, I reviewed the minutes from your October meeting. It appears to me that some of the activists who tried to force the DEP to shove the map down a public's throat are now attempting to use this commission. At your last meeting, some of the minutes, one of the activists referenced the map, and I'm going by what was in your thing. I hope I'm reading it right, because maybe I'm not. He characterized an attempt to control the most destructive permissible activity in the forest. And the way I'm reading that, he's saying that there's permissible activities that are allowed to destroy the forest. I know of none. The illegal people, they don't have permission to destroy the forest, so I'd have to get that explained to me a little further. There's no permissible activity I'm aware of that's allowed to damage our forest. Then he accused the DEP of not protecting natural resources. Why? Because they did not pass what he wanted. Then stated the DEP took signs down where vulnerable state species are congregating in preparation for winter. Well, all discussions that I heard from responsible users, everyone agreed legitimate, provable areas of concern should be restricted. Is the active statement of truth or half truth? I don't know.
DEP has clearly stated the snake areas during certain times of the year will be restricted and open the rest of the year. So everybody's in agreement to protect sensitive areas, but they have to be true sensitive areas, not blanket closures of all those roads that they try to accomplish to say we're wetlands or this or that. It has to be something we can see and touch. Activists want what they want with regard for responsible users of Wharton. When they thought they had the DEP in their back pocket, they loved the DEP. The DEP didn't do everything they wanted when they wanted, so now we're coming to you. Before I give the last statement, the off-road park, somebody had mentioned that off-road park. There was a man at the Hamilton meeting that gave a presentation on an off-road park, and basically, the way I understood what he told us, is that park was set up to fail. Every motorcycle, from what he explained, had to be registered. Every person had to have a license, insurance, and so forth. Well, young kids can't get a license, and a lot of these motorcycles can't be registered, but people can have insurance on their person. If that's required to have health insurance, I got it. I understand that. I agree with it. But to ask little motorcycles that can't be registered and to have a license, that park is going to be doomed for failure. And they say that they had to follow state rules for the registration and all. Listen, if we're going to have a park and we're going to make it work, and we change rules all the time, I've listened to you all day talking about different rules you're going to try and implement. We can set up a park to work where people will use and hopefully stop them going in other parts of the forest for that type of activity that is not like our fine sanctioned indoors and things like that. What I'd like to leave you with is that responsible users of Warren State Forest have repeatedly said in an area that is truly sensitive, that are open to sensible conservation of Warren. Blanket closures over our roads is not reasonable or fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
My name's Joe McNamee. I want to say that I'm for keeping the trail. I want to thank you, just like everybody else. Actually, you're taking more of your time today, just like everybody else is. I'm for keeping the roads and the trails open. Pretty much everybody that is on my side has already said what needs to be said. I really think you heard it. I think you said right at the beginning, we don't want to put a glass globe over it. There's a group of people who do. And that's all it comes down to. They would have started with the 258 miles or whatever they were going to close. It would have been a year or 10 years. It would have been another 200 miles. Next thing you know, there would have been 10 miles of road to drive on. And from everybody, from people driving their four-wheel drives, their dirt bikes, people taking their kayak on the roof of their Subaru to go drop in along the stream somewhere and can't do it. The horse people, the hunters that go to the end of the trail. I've been going out there 30 years and somebody said something about, oh, the only reason they go to the end of the trail is for a mud hole. I've been driving out there 30 years. I don't know any dead end trails that just got a mud hole. The places where they are going, they're saying, you know, oh, they drove into a meadow. If they want to call a trail that goes into a meadow, the meadow to mud hole, anybody with sense knows you shouldn't be driving out in that meadow. Is there places that should be blocked off because people are doing that? Maybe. Should you have to block them off? No, because people shouldn't be going in that meadow. I mean, it's common sense. So that kind of stuff comes down to the renegade who's running in the woods when nobody else is around and driving a spot where he shouldn't be. I think he said 600 and some miles. I thought it was 500 and some miles. The maps go back. I mean, you can get topo maps of Wharton State Forest. You know, as far as I know, from like the 50s, there's no reason why those roads should be closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, Jack Dixon.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I'm Jen Dixon. as much as you said, like you all gave your explanations that this is not your jurisdiction to rule the map. And I understand that there's conservationists and preservationists that are here that want to deem pictures that show issues that are going on in there. And I've been going out there for a long time, but I guess about the last 10 years, I've done a thing called geocaching. And when I went out there, the roads were some of the main roads were fine. Over the years, you see maintenance hasn't happened. So some of these single tracks or these dugout places, because nothing's been maintained and graded, is causing some of these issues. There's bridges that have fallen in. There's a place that people call Sunken Bridge. They didn't maintain the bridge. They never put it back up. So if they don't maintain it, of course people are gonna, these guys that are coming out in New York, we have a lot of tags. Like if you go out there, they're coming down and they're riding through. Yeah, they're gonna see that as an obstacle, as other people explain. And these are causing bigger and bigger issues because then you're having more, of the land being torn up because they never maintained it in the first place. But when they are doing maintenance, they're not doing proper runoff. I know that there's a plan to do some logging out off of Washington Turnpike and everything that came through here, and in that area, they're going to widen the road. They're going to take trees out and they're going to do all this grading and stuff. And in that plan, that when they spoke about it, I read the minutes and everything, they talked about how they had to properly grade the roads. Well, unfortunately, how the state is doing the grading now, it is also causing an issue, which is causing these ruts, because even a car that goes through can't even get down those roads that once were able to get down because they're not properly grading things. So it's a bigger issue. And some of the things I run into with the enforcement, everybody's telling me about enforcement, and maybe you can bring this to somebody that you know or whatnot. The enforcement comes to the point that, when we're sitting at a spot and we're talking to the officers, they don't want to go out and capture. They don't want to enforce. They want to go onto blacktop because now they've been given jurisdiction. I don't know if you know that. The state park police have been given jurisdiction to write tickets on blacktop. So they're not policing the areas and their vehicles. They have vehicles that cannot get down Sugar Sand. I mean, people have been getting stuck in Wharton. I'm sure people are familiar with, Mr. Beck's story. If you read his, about investigating all the little towns that used to be in Wharton, at Compromise, Martha, and he got stuck down there in the 30s in a regular car. So people have been getting stuck and they would just leave their vehicles. And that's a problem that the state is coming up and saying, oh, people are getting stuck. They can't, it's causing, dollars that tow trucks have to try and get out there, or they have to go and this is not something new. I mean, this is, 100 years old, that people, have had issues with the sugar sand, and that's the problem. If you don't know, one of the things that we want to do is, say, hey, mark a trail, like don't close everything off, but if you can't get down with four-wheel drive, then you're not allowed to go down. You shouldn't go down. It's not recommended that you go down there. Some of these wetland areas that they're talking about, though, are created from when there was a fire and they did a push line, and it created an open area for these guys to go into play. Nobody closed it back off to allow it to grow back and then remove the blockage. If they did that, then they wouldn't have these issues. And that's one of sometimes if you were to have gone to these meetings that they held and the state showed, the DEP showed like all these pictures, the pictures were of certain areas. And we recommend that our group, we want to go out and help. There's another place nobody's mentioned, like Jemina Mount. That needs, we want to help barricade like they did at Apple Pie Hill so that people wouldn't go up and run. So we just wish that the state doesn't do like a blanket closure, and that also there are extreme preservationist groups that do have a for-profit business out there that have closed some of these. All of a sudden, it's so funny that they opened up a library and that they are closing off all these wetland areas because they want to run their own business down there. And they want people to pay them to go see the woods. And they want to see, they want to give you a tour and give you all the information that's out there. Well, that's not fair to the people who can't. We've had people tell us stories that, hey, I got $20 left in my pocket. I'm putting it in my gas tank and taking my son out in the woods just to see what we can find. If the state closes that off, that man's not going to be able to do that anymore. And it's not about being able to have access and to open and room and stuff. It's about just being able to go out there and get lost. You know, that's the fun of it. You go out, you take a trail, you don't know where it goes. You know, there's some old foundations out there and stuff which have not been kept up, and it's a sin because since this happened and since people have been putting, there's a gentleman in here that has a website that has all the coordinates to all these mud holes. He's attracting more people to this, and it has created a larger issue. And that's what's got to be seen here. We don't want, we're hoping that, you know, we can find some relationship to not close anything off. And that's under your recommendation that you truly look at some of these areas and do take a ride out. Yes, are there wetlands areas that, you know, need to recover and stuff? Yes, that's true. But that area was a widely industrial area. They forested it. That's not even all the trees and stuff that should be out there. The white pines they used to use for sail, you know, for masts, they're not out there. It's scrub pine. So this is it's an evolution. It's an ever-changing area out there through the years. So under your recommendation with the state, I mean, just truly look, like what people are asking for is a small minority. The percentage is so tiny. They're just saying, hey, keep these trails open so we can still be able to get where we want to be. We don't want to have a super highway, and that's what they're trying to create out there by closing it off, and then people go. And that's just going to tear things up because then it's going to try and widen it. So it has to be the big picture that you look at, and hopefully you guys can have some suggestions or be able to help them out. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tony Tannasini, attorney at law. And I thank the commission for this day and allowing me this time to give some comments. I have a unique relationship with the Pinelands. Back in 2007, I took a brief break from the practice of law to join the New Jersey AmeriCorps Watershed Program. And as a watershed ambassador, I had the awesome opportunity to be in the Watershed 19, which is the Rancocas watershed, which goes going to Pinelands, and had an awesome opportunity to assess those streams in those Pinelands. And indeed, even back in 2007 and early 2008, I had witnessed that the damage that unauthorized and off-road vehicle use has done to this pristine and unique habitat, which is only found in New Jersey. New Jerseyans should always feel proud of themselves that they have a long-standing history of protecting the Pinelands. I had the awesome pleasure of meeting Chris Jade of the Rancocas Conservancy, the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, and also all the members of the Pinelands Preservation Alliance. One of the things that I had an opportunity to review, and I still own and watch periodically, is a publication put forth by the Pinelands Preservation Alliance talking about a video that mentions and talks about the pristine, unique nature of this habitat. And it's such a unique habitat that any unauthorized or any illegal use going into it, as we all know from the scientists in this state who have taught us so many times, creates non-point source pollution. And what does non-point source pollution do? It creates pollution into our watershed. And a major source of that non-point source pollution is vehicle use, from the antifreeze, from the oil, and from all the other fuels that are now in the Pinelands due to that unauthorized vehicle use. And we also know from the scientists, and this great state of New Jersey back in 2007 led the charge against climate change by passing the 2007 Global Warming Act, and indeed standing up for taking action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So this state has a long-standing history of understanding and supporting science. And our scientists have continually told us that unauthorized vehicle use does damage and hinder the viability of threatened and endangered species, which rely upon this habitat. And also the state species of special concern. The Pinelands Act, the Federal Act, and the Threatened and Endangered Species Act all operate in unison to protect these vital areas. And yes, we have competing interests. And I understand other people's competing interests, but we must not ever allow this precious environmental piece of jewel gem of the state of New Jersey go for unforeseen, because each time a motor vehicle runs across a vernal pond, a wetland, it is destroying habitat, and who knows how many countless of endangered species they are destroying. No one can account for that. We have wonderful photos by the gentleman who shows the photos of damage that has occurred in the pinelands. The commission has been charged with an awesome responsibility by state law and federal law to protect and preserve the pinelands. That is what this commission is charged to do, and to listen to the scientists who have brought forth testimony about the valuable ecosystem services that those pinelands provide, not only to the natural habitat, but to humanity as well, in terms of the aquifer that does indeed supply water for us, and perhaps may need to supply water for us in the far future as we understand and go further into climate change and further understanding how that's going to affect. I'll leave with another note. I also had an opportunity to really get to understand the work and the research that Dr. Walter Bien did in the pinelands, specifically relating to the aftermath of Warren Grove. We know that the pinelands are the most highly combustible source of fuel in America in terms of wildland fires. We know that firsthand. We also know that unauthorized vehicle use does create erosion. And that weakens the roots of trees. And we have the fallen trees that are not properly managed in terms of doing your prescribed burns. That adds to fuel. And any type of activity, whether it's a person using an unauthorized vehicle somewhere can throw a cigarette butt out the window and bam, you have an amazing forest fire. Warren Grove Run sits at the edge of the pinelands. And the personnel who utilize that range do so for the importance of national defense. As a soldier who served 4 years, and I'm not a hero who fought in Iraq or Afghanistan or did his 20, but as an infantry, understanding as the infantry training has taught me, understanding the vital importance of combat support is important. So not only do we have an opportunity to protect and defend the pinelands, and also to understand the science of that, we know that any unauthorized use, especially near that range, can create another incident which can lead to a fire. And yes, unauthorized vehicle use is one of those keystone things that could lead to happen. We have a legal duty underneath the act. We also have a patriotic duty to support and defend always the pinelands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentleman Fisher. Would you like to speak on? Gentlemen, is it? No. Okay. Arnold, did you speak your next?
Yep. Arnold Fishman, Medford Lakes. As a practicing attorney, I have been defending people before the municipal courts of the state of New Jersey for more than 50 years. You cannot successfully prosecute someone unless the land is properly posted. So it is important for the commission to understand that signage is an integral part of any enforcement program.
Thank you very much. Okay, Bill Caruso.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. First of all, Chairman, I've had a past life and ability to work with you, and congratulations on your service. And you've served in many different capacities, not just this one, so thanks for that. And you've done fine, sir. And Chairman, congratulations and good luck to you. Not to impress, because I doubt it will help with the credential myself. My name is Bill Caruso. I've worked in government for about 20 years. I was Chief of Staff to Congressman Rob Andrews for most of my career. And recently I served as Executive Director of the General Assembly for 2 speakers. I currently work in private practice. I am not representing a client here today, though. I'm here in my own accord and volunteer my time. This map situation really was a hot mess, and thankfully where we are today is in a better place. And from the conversations that have heard from the commissioners here, I'm happy to tell you that I think that there's a place to move forward and work together, everyone here in this room. I've been a part of a new group that formed several thousand people via Facebook, and it's a new world of how things work, after this crisis erupted, if you will. I don't off-road. I own a stock Jeep. It's more of a family car than anything else. I have 3 little boys who generally prefer spending time in front of a TV screen or computer monitor, and I'm happy to say that I'm able to take them out. They're 10, 8, and 5, so they're a little young yet to be doing 20-mile hikes and things of that nature. But my hope is by the time they're 12, 13, and so on, when they won't want anything to do with me, I'll at least have established in them an appreciation for the outdoors and wildlife. I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't geocache, I'm a kayaker. I've been kayaking for a very long time. I kayak on Mullica, Badstow. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. I don't like the sound of motor vehicles when I'm kayaking. I like to be out there appreciating nature, but I understand. I don't like to have to turn down the road and leave because I know there's duck hunters out there, and it's not appropriate for me to be out while there's duck hunters out, not because I'm afraid, just that's their time. But we share the forest, all of us together, and we have a responsibility to treat it well and to appreciate appropriate use for each and every one of us. I don't make judgments on folks unless they're doing something wrong. This map effort, as bad as it started though, I think has led to something amazing and really good. The group that has formed online, Open Trails New Jersey, is actively working right now with the DEP for enforcement. We heard some folks today that are trying to figure out how they can be more involved in the enforcement effort. Hunters are offering their trail cameras. Private citizens with a past life in law enforcement are offering their expertise. People like myself, who would normally turn a blind eye when we heard an ATV in a wildlife management area, because you know what, we mind our own business, are now starting to pick up the phone when we're out on our boats and on a trail and call that in. I was fortunate enough to run into one of the folks in the wildlife management area in Winslow. And he gave me a cell phone number. He said, feel free, call me anytime. And we do now, because it's our responsibility to take care of the forest when we see people that are breaking the law. Some other ideas, though, that we're working on with the DEP right now that I think are beneficial. Jemima Mount has been an area of concern. Rather than the mass closures that we've seen that were originally proposed, we've come to the table and said, let us volunteer our time, our resources, our manpower to come in and help you design an appropriate barricade so that people can drive up to Jemima Mountain, get out, experience it, but no one can drive there any longer and try to damage it. These are worthwhile initiatives that I don't think are going to cost the state money. I think it's going to empower a group of people that you see here today that want to help. And I think it's really in keeping with the spirit of what this commission is looking to do, and I think in an overall larger sense, what I think we're hearing from both sides of the equation, those that are for, well, we're all for protecting the pinelands. I think it's just a question of how we want to go about it. As a kayaker, I'll tell you, I struggle sometimes with some safety issues out on those rivers. There are many deadfalls in the Mullica and the Badstow. I experienced 2 women on Father's Day that had been pinned to a deadfall in the Mullica River, not far from Pleasant Mills, by the way, that had been out there for 4 hours stuck on a deadfall. The one woman was pretty badly sunburned, thank God, that was the only thing. But my concern there is, it is my understanding that if I were on my own to go take a chainsaw or a handsaw and cut that deadfall down in the water, I might actually be breaking the law. But there's probably an effort that we can all work together, the canoe liveries and the canoe and kayaking clubs, to go out and actually clear some of those rivers, as kayaking is becoming much more, and canoeing and rafting are becoming a much more popular sport in those rivers, before something horrible happens. And before the next answer is, God forbid, if someone dies out there or is horribly injured, we're going to shut down the rivers to recreational kayaking. There's a lot of good that I think is going to come out of this discussion. You folks can play an integral role in that. One of our frustrations that we're having now is how we go about responsibly, effectively working with whomever is in charge to tap these resources that you see in this room and hundreds of more beyond, to actually go out now, repair, police, educate. And that's the most important thing I will tell you today. If you shut down every road in the Pinelands and said we're never going to open it up to motor vehicle traffic, it will not solve your problem, because the lawbreakers will continue going in, as we've all heard today. I am never going to be successful in convincing somebody from Connecticut, Ohio, or in my backyard, and I live in Berlin Borough, New Jersey, that if you want to break the law, you shouldn't go out there and do it. I'm not one of these folks. But we're very lucky in the sense that we have a lot of responsible folks here who drive, a lifted Jeep, legal, by the way, who understand the beneficial nature of the Pinelands, who are out there and get the importance of us policing our own right now, who are having these conversations. They're having conversations with their family and friends, they're having conversations with their groups, they're having conversations with folks they find on social media or on YouTube videos that are posting ridiculous and illegal activities, and they're warning them. This is not acceptable activity, we don't condone it, and if you do it, you're going to get caught. What we have to work on with the DEP and others at the state level are some tweaks to the law where needed or regulation. For example, we've been told a mixed bag of information about whether or not a trail camera can be used to police activity. It's fine for dumping, and the DEP's program is working very well on capturing dumpers in Morton and other areas. But for some reason, for traffic violations, there's been a question. Well, that's an easy fix. If it's something that can't be done in the regs, I've got a little bit of background in that area in the legislature, and I'd be happy to help move a bill through the Assembly and Senate. We've also talked about the beneficial impact, and this may be a controversial issue, of impounding a vehicle. I will tell you, if you posted on the DEP's website a lifted Jeep that was impounded for illegal activity, I think that would send a very clear message to those that want to continue doing that, that you risk losing a $60,000 to $90,000 vehicle if you want to continue coming in and treating our Pinelands as your personal playground. We are not talking about protecting that activity. In fact, we're talking about self-policing it. But we're also not talking about spending money hand over fist, money that you don't have, as we heard earlier today in the COA discussion, and money the DEP doesn't have, and money the state doesn't have. This is the ability to take the next generation of Pinelands lovers and use them for good, put them to work. And there's a lot of volunteers that are willing to do that. So as you guys decide and struggle with this idea of what's going to come next and what role you can play, maybe that's one idea of expanding the effort that's currently being developed here and figure out how we can all work together. You've heard from some folks here that are frustrated, I think, in the process that begun. There's room here for those that started this map process too to be a part of it. We all have a common goal, we really do. I think we're talking past each other, and I think maybe today it's an appeal to you all to be the catalyst to bring us together and get some good things done. We're ready to go. This group, which is new and ready to help, wants to be part of the solution. We are not looking to run amok in the Pinelands. We are not looking to run amok in Morton State Forest. We're looking to protect what we have, the ability to be in the Pinelands, but the ability for future generations to enjoy it too, as we know it, as our parents have known it, our grandparents have known it. I thank you all. You're spending a ton of time here today, as you always do, and I know that. So we're ready to go and happy to help you, and looking forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very well. Hopefully we can take advantage of it. Right, Jim Justman.
Hi, my name is Jim Justice. I don't do well speaking in public, but I'll do the best I can. I want to thank you guys for your time and your efforts to help implement a program that will help all of us enjoy our time better in the Pine Barrens. I'm from about 2 hours north of here. I grew up on a 50 by 140 foot piece of property. And when I found out about the Pinelands in the early 90s and started coming down here and enjoying the time down here, it was a backyard I never had growing up. So as such, our family has always been outdoor enthusiasts, hunters, fishers, stuff like that. I really respected the Pine Barrens because it's what I didn't have. and I didn't want to lose it. In the mid-90s, I had the opportunity to get involved with Jeep Jamboree down here and establishing a Jamboree program. And since that time, we've put on Jamborees in the Pine Barrens every year except for one. One of the things that I really enjoy is bringing first-timers into off-roading. As such, we started about 20 years ago doing something called Jeep 101, which takes people who've never been off-road, who live in the concrete jungle, such as myself, and teaching them safe, responsible off-roading. I've done it all over the country. Jeep Jamboree does it all over the country. I've had an opportunity to go and help people put together programs in different regions. We do it in Maine, we did it in Massachusetts, New York State, Pennsylvania, quite a few locations regionally that have a high concentration of people who live in the concrete jungle. As such, I know how important it is to train people correctly, because most people that go off-road or buy a four-wheel drive just think you just get in it, you put the thing in gear, you mash the gas, and you go through. If the mud's deeper, go through faster. That's entirely the wrong way to do anything in water-saturated sand. And one of the things I learned early on is the importance of not using the throttle and don't bury the vehicle in a water-saturated sand. And that's become an important part of our education process down here in teaching people safe, responsible off-roading. I can't tell you how many people I've taken with a stock Jeep Wrangler, stock Cherokee, Grand Cherokee, and they've been able to go through the same water hole as the guy with the lifted modified vehicle that got stuck there. Because they did what they were told, they got off the gas, they didn't drive in the deep part of the ruts, and they idled through fine. Whereas the guy with the modified vehicle got stuck. One of my favorite things is to have a young lady with a stock 4-cylinder Jeep pull out the guy with the big lifted Jeep with the big motor and the lockers after she made it through and he didn't. It's just kind of a thing I do for fun. But I've had a lot of opportunities to work with the Pinelands Commission here. We've been actively getting permits since we started doing the Jeep Jamborees down here. And a short while into when I took over, all of a sudden I got a notification from the Pinelands Commission that I needed a permit from them also. So we applied for a permit, we received our permit. We always do everything in our power to stay within the parameters of our permit. One year we came down here and there were a lot of videos posted on YouTube that said Pine Barrens Jamboree. And they were vehicles that weren't Jeep vehicles. But yet they post something on a computer that says they're with the Jamboree. And we knew it wasn't our people. We had to come down here and actually have a special meeting regarding this. And what it all boiled down to is, unfortunately, through mass media today, you can put whatever you want on a computer and nobody knows what's true and what's not true. What I'm getting at is, at the end of our meeting, it was agreed that those videos in particular were not Jeep Jamboree participants, but other people. And one of the main things that your people brought out to us was, our concern is that you stay on the designated roads and trails. And we emphasize that's what we do. We don't take the go-arounds, we don't go out in the meadows. Our people, and Joe in particular, has even been to court to prosecute people that we've caught off in the meadows. I think an important thing that we need to do as responsible users is police ourselves, and is be prepared to step up and say, I'm taking a photo of you, if you're where you don't belong, I'm reporting you and I'm putting that photo into the proper authorities. I don't want to take all of your time today, but I just want to make sure that, we understand that most of the people that are doing the damage in the pines are not the responsible user groups that are signing up for permits. And those of us that are responsible user groups, we do our best to educate our people in the proper off-road technique. And there's no way you can get beyond human nature, which is to do something stupid, but we do the best we can to educate our people to do the correct things. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, Mary Ann Clement.
Maureen Clementi, I wasn't going to get up to speak in this part because you're not dealing with the public portion yet. But I have been impressed by the level of responsibility of the people that have spoken on behalf of the off-road. And it seems like that they have a respect for the Pinelands and want to work together to get things done. So I encourage this cooperation. So very different when we've dealt with the various gas companies and how you don't see that same kind of respect for the Pinelands. But anyway, I have to leave, and this is going. Can I cover my points,
Go ahead,
please?
you're the penultimate person on the list anyway.
Excuse me?
You're the next to the last person on the
Oh,
list, so
all
might
right,
as
good,
well.
good. Commissioner Lobauer, I'm very disappointed to hear that you're not going to be the chair any longer. You have held meetings very effectively, very respectfully and responsibly, and have respected the right of the public to participate. I hope that the new chair will do the same. So good luck in your endeavor. On the affordable housing, real quick, I came in a little late on that presentation, but the numbers on that chart seem to be a little out of whack in terms of the, they just seem to be flawed in some respect with the percentages. Why wouldn't you just take a percentage of the portion that's in the Pinelands as the basis for what and based on the buildable lots? I mean, if there's no buildable areas, then obviously there can't be any affordable units. I mean, it just seems
They're
like
apparently not
common
taking that
sense.
into consideration when they project these numbers.
On the CMP, there was one recommendation about eliminating newspaper notification, having everything on the website. That doesn't sound reasonable in terms of people that don't use the computer frequently. So I would do both. And the CMP presentation, is that on the website at all? Can we have access to that?
It'll go up there, yes.
Okay. And the recommended procedures, you had that the public utilities, that's under review. These are additional recommendations that you haven't really taken the time to look at, but that the public utilities that qualify for the pre-exemption for municipal approval is one of the items. But what about the private companies putting through an application and having it being approved only by the executive director? I thought that you folks were going to look at the fact that maybe taking the magnitude of importance or a dollar amount and look at that so that the executive director doesn't have sole authority to approve a project of the magnitude of the South Jersey Gas and the...
We are that.
But that wasn't one of...
That's
on the
what
list.
it was. That's what it was.
That, oh, I thought that was with the municipal, just the municipal doesn't have authority to, that the DEP, the Board of Public Utilities.
The point you're making is exactly what that was referring to.
Oh, I thought it was just that it would bypass the municipalities having to approve it. Okay. My last point is on the, I know that you don't have jurisdiction over the Great Adventure, the parking lot in Jackson. But I think that there is significant documentation coming through about T&E species that will be jeopardized by them deforesting the area and putting up solar panels instead of putting the solar panels up on the parking lot, which is to me a no-brainer. It solves more than one problem. And I'm sure you see the same value in that. Why, is it possible for the Pinelands Commission to write some kind of letter of support for the solar panels on the parking lot as opposed to deforesting the area? I mean, it's so close to your jurisdiction that might have impact on the T&Es within the Pinelands jurisdiction. Is that a possibility?
I don't think it is. Our council's not here today.
Can you?
It's a question for her, but I don't think it is. I would really be viewed as overreaching, I think, to go beyond our jurisdiction.
Well, I hope you ask the question and find out, because it's an important issue, and it's something that can be resolved so quickly, you know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, John Druding.
Actually, I know I'm the last speaker, so I will be brief. I don't want to be...
Actually, there's one other name. So you're the penalty. Oh, and there are others.
There's another list out.
Oh, there's another list.
Why don't you bring it in?
Yeah, we should bring it in.
All right, so I'll be brief. So,
Okay.
we agree that there's definitely issues with the forest that needs to be addressed. We disagree with the indiscriminate and heavy-handed approach of the map. One of the things that I do think we need, and it was talked a little bit about, was a baseline of what roads are out there currently. And I'm perplexed by the discussion about how there doesn't exist any maps out there. I have maps that my father gave me, U.S. topographical maps from the 50s that show all the roads in Oregon today. Certainly they're available from 1980 or 83 or whatever the cutoff is. So I'm kind of perplexed why that's even a concern when that's very much available and shows all the roads that are currently within Warren. We're interested in proposing practical solutions to these problems. Things were talked about earlier about technology and physical barriers and whatnot. I know the assistant commissioner brought up the fire truck in the meeting a couple of weeks ago. So that was kind of his turning point was, hey, this fire truck got stuck, and that's why that kind of started the map getting going. And there's a picture of the fire truck stuck right now. This picture was taken 2 weeks ago, and you can see, and it's hard to see that, but it's essentially unchanged. So instead of fixing the practical problem of filling the hole where the fire truck got stuck, they're instead proposing to close 275 miles of roads. It doesn't quite make sense. It seems like there are practical solutions that could actually solve the problems as opposed to sweeping closures in the Pine Barrens. So with that, like I said, I want to be brief. I'm also a member of Open Trails. I think that there's a huge opportunity that has been missed to date in terms of leveraging this community, but I hope to see that we don't continue to miss that opportunity. So, this group is here to help with resources, with manpower, with know-how to bring practical solutions to some of these problems that don't involve mass closures. All the DEP has to do is let us help. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, Maria Earhart.
Can I ask you real quick, are those photos they gave you going to be available for us to look at by any chance?
Yeah, I guess so. Sure.
Can I have them to look at them, or?
Maybe what we could do is scan them and put them on a website so that the public.
I would only be willing to bet that I bet you more than half of them are the areas that are not roads and you shouldn't be in anyway. And they're trying to make it work.
Well, yeah, that's true. I'm sorry. Let's not have a comment. Let's stick with me. All right, Maria Earhart.
She's sick.
Oh, she's sick. Okay. Is there another?
Well, it's actually signed the back of the sign-in sheet. The other one is filled, so.
Okay, well,
anyway, so good people didn't realize that was filled, and so. Wow. But I think that's just a sign-in sheet. So maybe just ask for hands. It might be easier.
Okay. All right. This looks like another 15 or so people. I would ask that you try to confine your remarks because it's already after 12. It's going to be very difficult for the commission we've already lost some commissioners.
I think you have to remind me, because I signed the back of that sign-in sheet. as a
Oh, I
sign-
see, yeah, oh, you thought.
I signed both sheets.
Okay, so let's just run through, maybe
maybe
that's the
Dan-
case. Oh, okay, all right, so we've got 5 people to go, all right, why don't we just go across the room that way? Yes, sir, go ahead. Oh, Fred, okay, come on up.
Good afternoon, the administrator of the Greater Carver Watershed Association, and I've spoken to you many times about the off-road damage. And I think there's one big concept that nobody has touched on, and it's something called carrying capacity. And that's the ability of the land to sustain a volume of use. And what's being proposed is an infinite use that has no carrying capacity limits. So if every person in the planet wants to ride a motor vehicle in the Pinelands, should they be allowed to? Should it be from 10,000 to 60,000 to 1 million? Is there a limit? And without the limit of carrying capacity, we're just going to love it to death.
All right, thank you. All right, so, Margaret.
Hi, Margot Pellegrino in Medford Lakes. Chairman Lobauer, I am really sorry to see you go.
I'll still be here.
I know you're going to still be here, but as chairman, you were the voice of reason. You were the sure hand on the helm through rocky waters, and well-reasoned and logical and polite and nice and fair. It's a travesty. Anyway, carrying capacity is really an interesting thought, and I think it can apply also to the, I'm sorry, I came late, so I missed a lot of the discussion with affordable housing, and I've only been having half an eye and half an ear on that topic. I do think, though, that this is a wonderful opportunity as well to do something new and different. I don't think it would necessarily mean building out new homes in these areas. There's plenty of homes up for foreclosure on the short list that you can, short sales. I think that retrofitting them and kind of along the lines of, looking at our problems where we are now and what they're going to be in the future, would really get behind the sustainable, high energy efficient, tiny home type mentality, even off the grid type thing. I think this is a super, super, super opportunity to do things the right way. And that's all I'll say about that. But of course, that also involves capacity, because you have more capacity if you make less of a footprint. And as far as off-road, I really do hope we can come to some kind of conclusion with that, because it is a huge issue. Tony Tansini mentioned the whole issue of non-point source pollution going into our streams and our waterways. I've tested water all over this state, and some of these contaminants have come back crazy high in areas that I thought were when I was taking water samples from the Pinelands, I thought this is going to kick everyone's butt, and then surprise, surprise, oh my gosh, we've got some high levels of some scary stuff. And if you want, I have all of that data. I could send that to you. It's not compiled in a very easy to understand way at all, but you could definitely thumb through it. I do have that data, and it should be pretty solid according to the company that I partnered with on that project. But the other thing is, so you've got, and where does this, harm our ecosystem? Well, if you're a hunter or a fisherman, you know that you want your waters to be clean, because you're degrading where your fish are living, where they're swimming, where they're spawning. So you really, honestly, by doing what you're doing on the land and creating that damage, impacting further downstream. That's a well-documented thing. It's also a question of access. Of course, I'm a paddler too. I want to be able to paddle wherever I want to paddle, and I've been lucky enough to be able to do so. I don't have a four-wheel vehicle. I just have a two-wheel drive vehicle, but I've been able to access where I want to access. However, if I want to take my little mountain bike and go pedaling all over the Pine Barrens, I have photos of being stuck almost up to my thighs in mud puddles on roads. There are actual roads, and they really should be closed because the damage is intense. And you can't just fill it in because it's become this issue of going around and around and around, and so you've got like mud flats where there used to be just a single road. So it is definitely an issue. I am hopeful that with education and exciting all the groups of us who love the Pines so much, we can actually do something positive and make things better. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill Thornton. I had not planned to speak on this topic and don't have site-specific knowledge of the problem. However, I'll call your attention to the CMP. Let's get back to where the commission has jurisdiction and has responsibility and authority, and talks about time to time designating. And I think the time is now. I think we've heard quite a bit of concern. I think Jason started the hearing off where we should be, and unfortunately, we seem to have lost that focus about the extensive damage that's being done, about inherently destructive practices that cannot be separated from the responsible user group versus the irresponsible user group. Some of the stuff is inherently destructive, and we have to acknowledge that. By the same token, your CMP says there are areas that are inherently unsuitable due to their environmental sensitivity for these types of disturbance activities, recreational or otherwise. So given that the criteria are all laid out in your CMP, given that you have the responsibility and authority, given that it's been brought to your attention and it's an escalating problem, and given, my final point is that how badly it's been bungled by the state DEP, and the department has so much baggage at this point that they can never be an honest broker or an honest regulator, that it becomes your burden. And I'm troubled that you're just seemingly limiting your role to providing recommendations to what DEP is going to do. Whereas if you read the CMP language, in consultation with the DEP or other interested persons, DEP is not given any more power or authority or control of the process under your CMP than I am, than me. So let's not follow in the leadership footsteps of that DEP. And my final point is, in deference to your professional staff, I have been an incredibly aggressive critic of their activities that I felt were over the line in working with regulated entities. And I feel obligated now because I was given information very recently that I spent 2 hours last night reading, which shows a chronology of how this thing really emerged, and the conversations on my friends and my associates were just equally as bad as the lawyers for, South Jersey Gas in terms of their role with the DEP professionals. And there was not a public process. And it was just like the concerns I had about pre-application meetings and giving an applicant a leg up and forming relationships with staff that were inappropriate. The same thing was done here between my friends and associates and people I agree with and the state DEP officials. So I have to call that out with an equal condemnation that I called out other breaches of what I consider professionalism, good government, due process, and fairness to the public. And all that activity, in my view, disqualifies DEP in any further way from being the manager of this issue. And I would urge you, I'm assuming at some point in time, given that they were shared with me, and I feel an obligation for full transparency, that these things are going to become public and people are going to have some serious egg on their face. And therefore, to kind of get out in front of that issue, you again might want to use that as a rationale. Thank you.
If I could just speak to your point about CMP, we do understand what our power is under CMP. I appreciate you bringing it up. I don't want to overstate how I introduced this. I did say this was our opportunity to make a recommendation because we were specifically asked. So we are responding to that invitation from the DEP, but I do not disregard, and you are correct. We do have certain authority under the CMP to act independently.
And that's why following last time, following Ornazian's presentation, I urged the commission to fill the void. And I was unaware that it was more than a void at that time. And now it's a 10-ton baggage on the DEP's back. And if I were the user groups that were shut out of that process, that I just disagreed with, but they had the same shot at the apple that I should have. And when I don't get that shot at the apple, and I see other people getting abused, I feel obligated to make that a point.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Till.
I'll be brief, because a lot of my points have been. I think that sometimes out of, mess and fights, you can actually come to solutions, and hopefully this will be one of those cases. But I think the most important part of this for the Pinelands Commission, since you are a planning agency and you have jurisdiction, and what happens in Wharton may end up being a template for Brendan and many other places, so you really have to do your job and hold DEP accountable. But your job, as far as the CMP is concerned, as far as public lands and even private lands, is to make sure that they're going to be managed and used in a way that protects the pinelands. That we do not love the pinelands to death. We do not allow for people who are, enjoying the pines, whether they're on a mountain bike or an ORV, to destroy those natural resources that belong in trust for all of us. That it is your duty to help steward. And so I think that's what we have to look at. And part of it is to look at you look at Oregon State Forest, is to look at what areas are the most environmentally sensitive, where are the roads cutting into wetlands or riparian corridors, and those areas should be the areas that we should look to close. We should also need to look at it from a recreational standpoint. Where are the places that most people want to go and visit? Can we get them there in a way that does the least amount of damage? Are there certain trails that are heavily used and need to be restored and maintained so they can take heavy use, while we can close other trails that aren't used that much or that are environmentally sensitive? And we need to come up with not only a plan for what areas to close off, but what areas we can use and how to get to places. And I think that is your role and your responsibility. And so I really believe that what we are seeing in the Pinelands, whether it's ORVs or turf grass fields becoming soccer tournaments or detention basins in the forest preservation area or pipelines, there's a dismantle. And you need to really stand up and do your job. I mean, I was kind of being malignant saying, why don't we turn a pipeline into an ORV path and close some more environmentally sensitive, but hopefully we won't see those pipelines. The point that I really want to make is that I think having an open and transparent process, and I know as chairman you have done that as best you could, and the new chair will do it as well, and I really commend you for your patience and all your work as chair. But I think this is an important test for the commission to get it right, and to make sure DEP gets it right. When I listened to Barazian last week and he talked about historic use, the policy in the state parks back in the 70s and 80s was that it was illegal unless posted for use. So just because someone has used a trail doesn't mean it actually was a trail. And I think we need to go back and take a step back and figure out what's the best way to meet the recreational needs without doing damage, and where do we need to not only, I think, close roads, but we should also be talking to fire people, because if we close the roads, can we also close them off, even for fire protection, maybe reforest some of those and get rid of some of that damage and restore some of those wetland buffers and other things that have been wiped out. So thank you. And
thank you very much.
Thank you for your work.
Is there anyone? Yes.
Jacqueline Rhodes, Pinelands Preservation Alliance. I hate to be the person standing in front of lunch, but I will be quick. I wanted to share two maps that we have here that I will hold up for the public to see, as well as I'll hand it to the Pinelands Commission. We are recording this, and so obviously this will be on YouTube, so you can share it with everyone, so you're fully aware of what we are proposing. Mr. Wolf stole my line in terms of bringing it back to the CMP, and what we would like to propose and what we shared in the memo is that let's try something. And under the Commission's authority, we'd like to propose a site, not closing the roads. What we're talking about is a natural heritage priority site. It's right off of Sandy Causeway. We have a number of dots here that show very direct damage in pond areas. So these aren't roads. We're talking about little cut-throughs that go through wet areas, ponds, areas that have been open like that, created over decades. And let's post these maps. Let's share with the public. Let's tell them these aren't appropriate areas for driving. We're not talking about the road. We're talking about, you could drive down these roads, which are already open, but not drive through the forest into these wet areas that are suffering from significant damage. Let's educate the public. That's all I'm asking right now, right? Show these maps, share it with your people. We'll post it on our website. The commission, if they say, we think this is an area designated that shouldn't be motor vehicle use, which it already isn't. It isn't like they just post the roads on topo maps. It's already designated by DEP as a natural heritage priority site. It was designated by the Pinelands Commission as a high ecological integrity area, and this is what your map shows in the red. The state has listed different threatened endangered species habitat, which we have outlined in the purple areas. So again, according to your rules, I need to protect the location of threatened endangered species, not just the habitat, but actual sightings that have existed there. And so again, you will have this posted. It will be on the video, Teresa. But we'll post it anyway in the PDF. She fell asleep on me. Totally agree with all the comments. Having cameras, having people call 1-877 or DEP, that is something that we're encouraging people to do. I think definitely, we've always asked for enforcement. We've been up here for the past 12 years saying, there's a problem here, we gotta do something about it, we need more enforcement. And we understand there's limited resources, and I think the people can care for it. But I think the agencies have a role as well. And this would be one of those steps, and I think, as Ms. Galley had indicated, let's try something. Well, here you go. Here's a small area. Let's try it. Let's see how it works, and let's get people moving. And then lastly, I would just like to say, we are the organization that bought the for-profit livery. If anybody has any questions about that, it's Pinelands Adventure. Pinelands Adventures actually is a program that we have operated for greater than, I guess, at least 15 years. Running programs, bringing people out there to educate, to learn about the wonderful resources that exist out there, in the hopes that educating these people, they will care for the area. It's been a program we've always had. We took over the livery because the individual that operated there for a number of decades wanted to move on, he wanted to retire. That site cannot be expanded. We are confined by the resources, the work that he's done there. Maybe we could operate a couple more trips, but we're confined by that particular site because it's in the Pinelands boundary. So I just wanted to share that. Happy to talk afterwards about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I don't want to jump in. I'm afraid
Is
to
there
talk.
anyone else that had a comment on this? All right, you will be the last.
Okay, and I will be relatively quick because I have spoken with Susan about this. I'm Tiffany Cuviello.
Sure.
I'm a planner that works with various municipalities. In fact, I'm working with 6 or 7 municipalities in the Pinelands on their affordable housing plan. They are in the Atlantic and Cape May vicinage under Judge Johnson. You made comments about what can the Pinelands Commission do to help. Judge Johnson, there are no numbers assigned for any municipality in Atlantic or Cape May County based on Judge Johnson. Right now, we're putting our plans in saying this is what we believe our affordable housing obligation is, given fair share housing numbers, e-consult numbers, and limitations. Mullica Township I work with, we'll use that as an example. We're saying our obligation is 0 because of the constraints. We would love to have the commission staff and the Pinelands Commission support that. There is a basis for that, and it was not referenced in your presentation. There were amendments made to the Fair Housing Act in 2009, and there was a provision created under the Housing Rehab and Assistance Program Act, which actually states that within a regional planning entity such as the Pinelands Commission, 20% of the housing that is built should be affordable to low and moderate income households to the extent that it's economically feasible. The act then goes on to further state that these regional planning entities are appropriately positioned to take a broader role in planning and provision of affordable housing based on regional planning considerations, which go from economics to environmental issues, and that regional planning entities are able to coordinate regional affordable housing opportunities in cooperation with municipalities, and in effect can actually reduce the obligation assigned to that municipality by 50% if it's appropriate. That needs to be looked at by your legal counsel. I think if you use that as a basis to get involved and help the municipalities such as Mullica, I work with Mullica, Woodbine, Uniborough, Univista, Galloway Township, Upper Township. Those are 6 municipalities, all with Pinelands implications. that would be wanting to sit down, and I'll even sit down with staff and give my time to help understand how I see it plays out, how it plays out. I'm working with various attorneys in different municipalities with different expertise levels, trying to navigate this process, not to stop affordable housing, but to do it appropriately in appropriate locations. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Camille, that's very generous. As you heard, the sense of this committee was that we would like to get in front of it. We would like to have established a position that can be shared with the courts before they start dictating to us.
And they're already working on that dictation, so you're almost late to the game, so the sooner you act, the better.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there is no one else to speak, and then close the public comment portion. This time,
I thought that I had planned to limit my comments just to the Paris access plan.
Come on up.
Well, I got public before we.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I understand that.
Don't get between, keep the action
No pressure, Bill. I married a woman who had issues like along the same lines. Anyway, don't worry about how I got that one. I'd like to repeat the prior to just previous testimony on COA.
Yeah.
I don't know legally, can you file an amicus? Can you get into the cases at this point? But yes, get out in front of that. Commissioner Lloyd is right on that. Very troubled to hear things like we're going to wait or follow DEP's lead or excuse me, COA's or the town's lead and all that stuff. Just get out in front. With respect to the several times, whether it was stormwater, septic thing, the plan review report and professional staff's comments numerous times. I didn't count. Said that you were going to consider following the DEP's statewide requirements. And they got stormwater, septic, I can't remember what the third issue was, but that is not you don't have to be consistent, you should not be consistent with the state. You've got to be more stringent, you've got to be more protective, you've got to be, don't worry about that consistency argument, I don't think it holds. And finally, I'm very disturbed to hear that you're no longer the chairman. I was a critic, maybe I was over the line in the criticism, but I always felt that you were fair and open and transparent and reasonable. And I hope your successor continues in that pattern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else? With that, we'll close the public portion, and I'll open it up to the committee and Commissioners. Commissioner Lloyd.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank all of the members of the public for coming today and for informing us about your views on protecting the pine trees. And I was really gratified to hear that I think everybody in this room shares the concern of well protect the pine woods. And I hope that this commission will work with you to accomplish that goal and to protect the harms, remedy the harms and protect the pines. And I think this is a goal we all share. Secondly, I want to assure you that this agency at least will be transparent in our going forward on how to deal with these problems. I think that's part of listening to you today is I think evidence of that transparency, and at least I think we intend to continue that. And then finally, Mark, I'd like to thank you for your service and your excellent leadership over the last 4.5 years. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Chairman. And Sean, I welcome you to the chair and pledge my assistance in any way I can to help you and all of us deal with the tough issues we have in front of us.
Thank you very much.
Another question, what is the next step? We're going to give advice to the DEP on this matter. How will we do that? Will it be a letter, or will staff put that together? Will the commissioners have input on that? Just what will the mechanism be where the commission advises the DEP?
I think it's going to be up to this committee, and I think we should digest and to echo what Commissioner Will said. We heard some terrific comment today. I think this is quite possibly the most productive public comment session that I've ever been a part of. Now, we've had a lot of great ones here. Some would argue a lot that didn't go long, but this one certainly was productive. I have to agree with the gentleman, I think it was Mr. Caruso, who said there's real commonality in this room. People are on opposite sides of the fence, and yet they have real commonality and interest in protecting the pylons, and I heard it loud and strong. So I'd like to see us digest this comment, and then maybe the members of this committee come back with some recommendations from among the things that we've heard. We may even want to take up the suggestion that one commenter made, that go out and see it. Go out and take a look, examine exactly where it is we're talking about, rather than trying to dictate things from here in this building. Maybe if we could arrange something like that, that would be helpful. And then, I'd like to see us synthesize something as a recommendation that we could then offer to the full commission.
I know I have some questions as far as some of the comments. One of the comments, I think, talked about some kind of legislative requirement for road access plans. I'd like to know if there's a basis, what the basis is to that, and that roads have to be designated if you're going to enforce laws on those roads. I think that was brought up. So I think there's some things in place, some legal things in place regarding this issue that we need to know what the facts are on those matters. I guess I could send staff my questions on these issues and so we can get a response.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to hear a little bit more from the fire department also. It would be helpful. Their points of view.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, emergency access is important for us to understand. Okay. Commissioner Earl.
I want to share your sentiments. I also agree that there's great comments there from both sides of this and a lot of commonality. And it's a shame that the DEP did not reach out to everybody on both sides of this issue ahead of time, because I think we probably wouldn't even be here today. And I do agree that we should have some kind of involvement going forward. I'm not quite sure yet in my mind. But absolutely, if the DEP reopens the issue, we need to be a stakeholder and be heavily involved in that process. One other comment, I was going to reserve a longer comment when I had the full commission there, but I did want to thank you, Mark, for the last 4.5 years of your leadership here. And I look forward to taking on the role of chairman and hope I can do it with the same leadership and integrity that you have. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. That's extremely kind. Everyone has been extremely kind. I really appreciate it. Chairman, I wish you the very best, and I too pledge my support, and I will help you. I mean, this is an important job that we have to do here. We do it best when we do it together. All right, if there are no other, yes, Mr. Ashman.
I just wanted to say two things. One is there were stakeholder meetings, and there is a record of them, and who was there, and what they said. I've read all of that. I'm not sure.
After the fact.
I'm not sure they were listening, but they did hold them. And the other thing I'd like to say is, Mark, amongst all the chairmen, you're right up there in front.